I have it.
Okay, planning board, we are live, we are recording, phone lines are open, go for it.
Thanks very much. Good evening and welcome to the Town of East Hampton Planning Board meeting for July 26, 2023. We have a variety of matters on for tonight, including 2 public hearings. We have 7. We have a number of matters on for site plan and sub-waiver and subdivision review. But most of all, we're going to have a presentation by Cityscape about the wireless master plan for the town, which will be pretty much the last thing on our agenda. We're going to start off with Monroe Osborne, and there's nothing quite like a mea culpa to get your day started or your evening started. Yes, Ed, and you don't go too far, because hopefully this won't take like any good mea culpa, it'll be quick. Last meeting, this matter was before the board, and as you can see, we had 2 members who were recused, and so when it passed 3-5, the modification. It's a subdivision modification. When that passed 3-5, I said, "Wow, it's 3-2." And math is, you see, the problem. And when it passed 3-2, I said, "Well, it passed 3-2," and I know better than that. At least I think. Anyway, it needed 4 votes to pass. It needed to go 4-1, not 3-2, in order to pass. And I said it passed. It didn't. I was one of 2 people, Randy was the other, who voted against it. The reason I gave for voting against it was it's a modification of the subdivision map, and the discussion centered around whether there was what do we call it? Thank you. Change of circumstances. I wanted myself just a little bit more on the table to justify the change in circumstance. But three members said that they had enough. They had enough to vote for the change of circumstance. I didn't, and I wanted to see about a change in the law that occurred in
85, I think.
85. Thank you, 1985, which we didn't have before us at the time. Double whammy. I said we had that it had passed, which it didn't, and it was approved. Actually, the change, the modification was approved, which it hadn't. But then the additional information came in that the change in circumstance had in fact taken place. There had been a change in the law. I'm reading from Nancy's letter to Mr. Whalen. Please be advised that subsequent to Wednesday's meeting, the attached town code section 131-3.02 dated August 25th, 1985 was found. Highlighted section 131-3.02F2 states that the maximum grade for driveways shall not exceed 15%. As the current code standards dictate, a lesser grade of 12% this factor will be considered by the board in light of the fact that the Monroe minor subdivision was both approved and amended in 1976. So as far as I'm concerned, with this additional information, I would be prepared to vote for the modification. I don't know if Member Parsons would come to the same conclusion. Well, you'll have your chance. But and I don't know what the other 3 members who did vote for it think, but yeah. So the first thing I'm gonna do is make a motion to open the, am I opening the public hearing? What am I doing?
I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it.
Reopen the issue?
Yeah, the matter, whatever, yeah.
I move that we reopen the consideration of the Monroe minor subdivision modification. Can I get a second on that motion?
Second.
All those in favor of opening? Aye. And now that the matter has been reopened, all those in favor of granting the Monroe minor subdivision modification, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The Monroe Minor subdivision modification passes by a vote of 5-0 unanimous.
Only Devon's is both on our way here. It's too late.
There we go. So again, my personal apologies to the applicant for making you.
I was thinking about that when it occurred, and it'd been a while since I dealt with that issue. So then I get Nancy's letter and we checked, but she's right.
Yeah. No, I missed it too. Yeah.
Well, 3 lawyers and we all. So that never happens.
We did
It's
notice.
on you guys.
Yeah,
It's on the lawyers.
Yes, you're right.
It's on you guys.
Scampered out after.
Yeah, you did make a hasty exit.
Pull your head.
That's it. So anyway, so now the modification's approved. You get a letter saying so and go ahead. All right, so with that, the recused members may rejoin us. And in the ongoing, let's fix it now before it goes too far issues, we're going to deal with 395 Panago Road. Mr. Horsens is the person on that one. And we have an appearance by Eric Chance, Director of Housing, lest anyone think he's there on any other. Is the app? He's the app. He's the app. You're going to cover, you're going to be ambidextrous here? You're
Yes,
gonna do
yes,
both?
multi-hatted. Yeah.
The reappearance in his prior role and an appearance in his current role. Floor is yours.
Okay, so this is the preliminary subdivision map. Just to remind the board, there was a public hearing at the last meeting where this was discussed. The board had requested that a pedestrian access from the cul-de-sac be added to the northern, the large portion of the CPF reserved area to the north. And specifically between lots 7 and 8, which you can see are up here in the northern section, the northeast, 2 northeastmost lots. We have amended the map to provide that, specifically, again, I guess, and I'll zoom in a little bit, by taking lot 7, which was, as the earlier map was drawn, the largest lot, and using that to add the access easement. Again, the thought, the comment from the planning board was that this would be an access that would be only for the residents of the subdivision. Again, there's already an access for the general public provided via this 50-foot wide flag strip portion of that reserved area. But you can see here on lot 7, what we did was take the map. This was already a little flag strip portion on lot 7. You need to have 20 feet of frontage on the cul-de-sac. So basically this flag strip increased by 10 feet in width into lot 6, but this 10-foot wide pedestrian access easement was added along lot 7. Now, obviously, as you can see, we did amend the map as the board had requested. I would ask that the board reconsider this, really specifically because, as you can see, the lot areas are provided there. Unfortunately, there's not really anything for scale reference, but lot 8 itself is about 13,000 square feet. These are smaller lots. Generally speaking, the planning board wouldn't be looking at even a minor subdivision that had lots of less than 20,000 square feet. The town code was amended to permit smaller than normal lots for affordable housing subdivisions, so that we could get more lots on the property. So basically, again, there's nothing here for scale, but when we drew this, we shrunk it down. This is only 10 feet wide, this access easement here. Normally, what you want is something like 50 feet in width, which is exactly what was designed on the western side of the lot. So you have a 10-foot though. There are some that are that narrow in town. We added that as sort of the minimum access. If you did do a 50-foot wide access, and as you can imagine, because you can kind of see it here, you'd be eating up the entire lot here. So you need to have something that's smaller. Again, these lots are smaller lots, so they only have a 15-foot side and rear setback for a principal structure. So, and again, being small, it's conceivable that, lot 8 and lot 7, when a residence is built on those lots, you might have a home that's 15 feet away from where you have people walking up to that rear reserved area. We feel that it is not too much of a burden on the residents of the subdivision to walk down the road to Panago Road and then up through the trail that's going to be created to the rear. So we would ask you to reconsider that. However, as you can see right in front of you, we have amended the map. It's not the end of the world if that remains, but I just don't think that it's going to function as the board had intended based on the comments that you all had at the last meeting. The other thing too, one thing we did look into, because it was also requested that access be only for the residents of the subdivision. I did consult with the town attorney's office. They confirmed that you can have such a restriction. Since that rear portion is CPF, you could not restrict access to the general public, but by virtue of the fact that that flag strip portion along the western side exists, you could have a condition of the subdivision that restricts that only to the lots within the subdivision. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Other than that, you will see on this map, we did remove hypothetical buildings and topography. We're going to have to do that anyway for the final subdivision for filing with the county. So just in case you're looking at it and you notice that that's different. So basically that's really the issue for the board to discuss. We hope that you will not require this, but regardless, we think the preliminary application is complete. Hopefully that will be at your next meeting approved, and we'll quickly submit a final subdivision application to you. Just two other matters of business. The board has received comments from the Suffolk County Planning Commission. Really, the bottom line is they deemed it a matter for local determination, which means that there's not going to be any further review from them. They did have some comments recommending a phase 2 environmental assessment. We don't feel that that's necessary. It's not something that's required. They said it should be done. It's in relation to a proposed designation of certain areas throughout the state, proposed environmental justice areas, which are areas that are generally centered around minority communities and lower income communities. Basically, the idea being that to discourage any local municipality from doing sort of a cursory review of something or thrusting a project on a low income area. I don't believe that's the case here. There's nothing in the environmental conditions of the property that really warrants a phase 2 environmental assessment. Again, that was sort of a recommendation of the Planning Commission. They didn't require it, and they stated it's a matter for local determination. So legally, there's nothing further required from them.
Could I just stop you on that, because that's a new thing?
Yep.
Has legislation passed on that?
No,
yet?
it's purely in a proposal stage
So
at this point.
The Planning Commission is looking prospectively as though that's.
Yes, yeah, they're being forward thinking and saying, here's something, we notice this is in an area that is proposed to be one of those areas, under this legislation that may very well be adopted in the future, but not now. Normally they would require an environmental assessment of the property. We already did, an EAF part 2. There's been an archaeological study on this property. We've done all of the mandated, and I think more so, environmental review of the subdivision. So I don't feel that that's necessary.
I just want to think definitionally, it's not an overlay district.
No, it's not.
How is it that this particular parcel is deemed or expected to be part of this? What's it called? What's the
Environmental justice area.
environmental justice?
It's very much akin to the scenic areas of statewide significance. That is something that for many years, you'd even see it in the evaluation memos. It said proposed scenic area of statewide significance. It was adopted a number of years ago. But it's basically, just like that was designating certain areas that had, unique scenic beauty for, further scrutiny. These are areas, it basically, what it is they're census designated places. So like East Hampton North, which is the census designated place that this property is in, is comprised of individual little blocks. And when one of those blocks, statistically as a result of census data, has I don't know what the threshold is, but a certain percentage of a minority population or a lower income population, they've proposed that these be, flagged as those areas. Again, I think the idea here is to take, so that a developer doesn't prey on a community that is more vulnerable, say, than a neighboring one. This particular census block that they identified actually goes down the lanes, goes down Indian Wells Highway in a narrow strip, but then comes up, encompasses this property around where Hampton Road meets Panago Place, but then includes properties that are along Accabonac and Springs Fireplace Road just to the northwest here. So it includes the Accabonac apartments. I believe it includes the Springs Fireplace Road apartments and a number of affordable housing developments that are within the area. I believe that's where that
why this
designation came from.
Rings the bell.
Because obviously those are lower income families. I would point out I don't know if you'd say irony or coincidence, but this is an effort to provide more affordable housing for such individuals. So, but that's the background on what that comment means.
So we understand where it comes from once the legislation actually presumably comes into.
Yeah, I don't think that this is a predatory development that's being thrust on a low-income community. I think it's our efforts to improve those conditions throughout the town.
But it does mean that if there's development done in that area, that we have to give it a special look.
Correct.
Thanks, I just wanted a little education.
Yep.
on the board there.
Eric, what about the area right next to it? Isn't there adjacent property that was developed,
Yes.
much larger lots, and
Yep.
would that be considered a predatory?
No, I don't think so either. And I mean, that might be a polemic word to use, predatory, but they're basically, in reading the background of it on the DEC website, I think the goal there is to prevent people from being taken advantage of, people that are in, vulnerable segments of the population. But first of all, it's still only proposed right now. When I know the subdivision you're speaking of immediately to the east, when that was approved and reviewed, this concept was not in existence. I don't think that's really what they're getting at. I think they're getting at more, heavy industrial types of developments, not, that in particular, the one that you're speaking of is a 4-lot residential subdivision with I believe 5-acre lots and I think a 70% reserved area or 75%. So I don't think that's at all what they're trying to discourage.
Thank you very much. So, Randy, this one is yours.
Okay, Eric, can you zoom out a little on that, or? Sure. Particularly just where the reserved area is on the C9 and C9 Realty, the reserved area butt up against this?
Yes. Yeah. At one point, I don't have it handy today. At one point, I had taken that subdivision and superimposed it next to this one so you could see where the reserve areas match. I'm not sure if we have an aerial in there, but I'll grab that because that'll help you out. This property line right here is the edge of this commercial property. So I believe the lots that are in this subdivision, I know that there's 1, 2, and then 1, 2 on the other side. So, there's only 2 that abut the subject parcel. I believe they're basically situated here. And I think that the edge of one of the lots comes up and sort of clips the edge of that reserved area. But basically where you see this property boundary, I believe this is 2 lots. You know what I mean?
So it's development, it's not open space.
No. The reserved area is up to the north and then also to the south. I know there is a strip here. It's tough. I don't remember exactly where it lines up, but I know that there are building lots or at least one that abuts here. I do know though that I forget the exact width, but for that reason, in anticipation of development of this lot, there is a fairly wide, I forget if it's 75 feet or 100-foot scenic easement that's along that side of the property. So there is a buffer. That's I think where you're.
If, yeah, I think it might be helpful to see aerial.
Yeah, I'll try and.
Not necessarily the 1 year, but just an aerial of that area.
Just give me a second. Let me try and find one. Might take a few minutes.
Okay.
Sorry.
So basically, I thought a lot about it, and, I went out and looked at it, and want to respect the, Eric and his departments, and Tina too, suggesting that this 10-foot wide easement could be a burden on those two lots. And, I'm willing to, obviously, whatever the board decides. I'll tell you what my arguments for it are. One is we can create it and they don't have to open it. But if we don't create it, there's never going to be another opportunity to have a 10-foot wide easement between two of those lots. I do think that the families and other people who live in here are going to want to get, they're going to back up to reserve and to trail. I do think they're going to want to use it. I don't know if you plan to improve a trail in that access strip, or it's just sort of left unresolved.
I mean, that's up to the board. Obviously, if you're going to create it, the intention is to open it up and to have a trail and to have an access. But yeah, so I mean, the intention would be to open it up. But like you said, I mean, you could establish it on paper legally as a part of the subdivision, and then the town could choose not to open it.
Yeah.
So.
And the other things that occurred to me are that this lot owner has certain benefits. It's an 18,000 square foot lot. It butts on the reserved area, and I thought it butted on the reserve, but Eric's saying there's a scenic easement here. Most of these lots have neighbors on both sides. These ones have an office complex. In other words, and I think we did this, if we were going to burden anybody in there with a potential 10-foot wide easement, and probably a footpath would be more like 4 feet in the 10 feet. And also, we had a recommendation for sidewalks in here that got shot down. And I'm kind of concerned that we're not allowing for enough opportunity for foot and bicycle use in here. We're kind of leaving it where any adults or children, or people walking their dogs, are going to walk down this 20-foot wide road with no sidewalk. As far as we know, the trail is not open. We don't know that it will be open. And so I'm just thinking maybe we want to leave as many options as possible for the housing office and the town board, but we're not going to have any condition that it must be opened. The other thought I had was possibly you could possibly put, well, two things. One would be that this reserved area allows for trails to be put through it. And you could put a 10-foot wide easement, or, anywhere. You don't have to specify. Just say that a 10-foot trail or whatever width you want, it's possible to put a trail from this road to the trail over here through that reserved area. That would be another alternative.
Would the purpose of that be so that the folks who live in the subdivision wouldn't have to walk down on Pantago to get to the access?
It just gives them enough, if that trail on the west gets improved, I can imagine kids on bikes, people walking their dogs, it could get a fair amount of use from the people in the subdivision. An easement along the top of that reserved area would allow them, well, if you had both, you could do a loop walk. And
Yeah.
or you could possibly go up the road. I'm just mainly trying to leave options.
See, to me, the
Yeah.
biggest advantage or the biggest reason to keep that trail on the north end is the folks who live in the subdivision, if they want to access the reserve area, don't have to walk on Pantago to get there.
Yeah.
And so your suggestion, and I'm wondering how Eric feels about this, now the housing department, if the access was down at the south end in that scenic easement area, as opposed to the north end, and I think the concern is that you're gonna be interfering with somebody's enjoyment of their land by having a path there. I think Randy's suggestion might cover both concerns.
I guess, I mean, I don't know if I would prefer to see the access be on, off the cul-de-sac on the north, over going through the reserved area, but I will say just, if you did do that, the reserved area here is about 100 feet wide. Well, as it's drawn on this line right here, exactly 100 feet wide. If you were gonna put a trail through here, you'd probably wanna come into, again, you kind of wouldn't want to put it right along the edge of lot 16 here. You'd want to come in a little bit. And if you came in 25 feet, then you're only talking an extra, not even 75 feet as it's drawn here, to get onto the sidewalk and then just walk another 100 feet or so to go up, up that trail. So I don't know, you know what I mean? You're doing a shortcut here just so you don't have to walk an extra 75 feet and up around there. So I don't know that it really, it's really any better in that sense.
So my way of thinking is just that you keep people off Pantago.
Is there a
Yeah, no, I
sidewalk?
get it, but there's a pretty, in that area there's a sidewalk, it's set back pretty far from the road. It's not like you're right on the edge of Panago Road, in that area. So what I'm saying is, you would basically, it would be, 75 more feet, probably at the most, of just walking down to the sidewalk, walking another 100 feet and then hitting that trail connection. I would prefer to see that, for both as the housing director and just from planning principles of, rather than needing to do, when you're doing a trail through a reserved area, you need to do clearing. So you're doing more clearing through a reserved area. I'd rather see you just walk a little bit more and then come up that trail link.
Let me ask you one other thing too, just more information. My understanding is that there's a potential for a trail that goes sort of northeast. They said maybe that pond area could be. So people may want to walk through this reserved area, perhaps to the lot to the north of the pond. And then the reserved area next door, I don't know who owns that. It's the town getting dedication. So there's going to be maybe a bigger block up there of open space. Which actually gives these folks, if we kept that 10-foot access, they could get into that trail system without walking all the way up between the different houses. Really, it's really a trail between houses on both sides. Anyway, I'll let the board chew it over.
I will just add, I totally agree with you in principle of the idea of having that access up in the northeast. And I think that's where it makes the most sense, the end of the cul-de-sac, and then you just, cut into the woods. To the objection though is just the scale. You know what I mean? The size of the lots, and then it just seems like it's going to be crammed in there and be a burden on whomever, we put in the homes on lot 7 and 8. That's
So
really.
how do you feel if it were on the map and you and the town board are going to decide whether or not you ever open it? Any comfort or?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the, that's why I said, we're asking that you're not required, because I just don't think it's practical, but this isn't, I don't have my, saber sharpened.
We wouldn't
We're
require
not gonna
that,
die on that.
Yeah, exactly.
we wouldn't require that it be open. I don't think.
No, I like that idea, actually. I think it leaves the options open. I think that's a good idea.
Is that actually, I like it too.
Yeah.
Is that an option?
Yeah.
I believe so. It's not something that I've looked into.
What are we really accomplishing then? Because isn't the point that
Well, that's it.
we want to have actual access?
Well, the
Well, it
future,
becomes too tight and.
Well, I know, but what's
Yeah.
why not access now if we think access is important?
because the trail system isn't built yet, the houses aren't built yet, it's sort of premature to open it. And maybe Eric and the town board in the future will say, you know what, we agree these houses are too, we don't want to open it, but if we don't put it in now, it's not even a possibility.
It's a unique situation because, in a standard subdivision, you'd make lots, they'd be sold off to individuals. If you created an access easement like this, it would be memorialized saying, lots 1, 2, 3, 4 all have a right to traverse this access over whatever property it's on. In this case, the town owns the underlying land, and the model of putting people in the homes will be to sell the homes to the individuals that go in there, but the town will retain ownership of the underlying land. So the town, in the end, as Randy's saying, still has that authority, but it's a unique situation. And I'm not, we haven't really discussed all of that of, if you set up an access easement and it's, the devil will be in the details, so to speak, of the wording of that document. That is something that can be resolved at final.
If the people who live immediately next to
Yeah.
it hate it
Yes.
after a while, then they can take that issue to the housing department or the town board.
You're only convincing me to fight harder.
Well, the idea is it won't come back to us, right?
No.
It wouldn't be us.
Unless you get a modification request, like on your first
Well,
application.
but this issue, absent the modification request, passes this way but once. And we will either approve it or not. You were about to say?
Well, yeah, if we're going around, I don't want to interrupt Randy if you're.
No,
I'm trying to keep the ball.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I would say that we often see access easements for vehicles approved in a map that are not open, but they're there in case they need to be opened in the future. So I think it is possible to say, we're leaving this access easement and just remain silent, or whatever Nancy advises, that if it's really going to be up to the town board to open it. Yeah.
Michael? you have anything?
I do not object to the easements by Pentago. If I can be 75 feet away from cars and trucks going 50 miles an hour, I'm gonna take that path. My fear is that no one's gonna use this space, right? If you don't have access to the end of the cul-de-sac, I mean, it goes nowhere right now. And there's no guarantee that the north end of is gonna connect to other trails.
No, there are no existing trails in those areas, but obviously the intention is to construct one through that flag strip for access to the rear. But right now, there isn't anything in the immediate area to link into.
A dog park.
Yes.
It's gonna become a dog
Or
park for the
just,
neighborhood.
for deers and raccoons.
Everybody who borders on it will probably wander into it. All the lots,
The question is how.
yeah,
Yeah.
through their backyard,
Yeah.
probably.
I mean, 10 of them back up to it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
How would the other people get to it if there's no access
It's
easement?
around.
Go all the way down to Panago and come up.
Yeah.
The folks on the east side of
That's a grassy path.
Anacourt.
Well, they are going out for a walk, so.
I don't think it's a huge burden to come around and up,
Yeah.
but if they
Yeah.
decide not to open it, then it's not a big burden on the neighbors.
Okay, so how do we feel about it?
Well, I think Randy has a good idea. I like that.
We all agree with Randy's idea?
I'm against that idea. Because you either are for it or you're against it. I think it is a burden on the homeowner to have people walking through and to leave it open that it may happen one day. I'm against it. We can either decide to approve it now or not. I think that to have that in somebody's backyard, I certainly, if I lived there, I wouldn't like people just traipsing through my yard all the time.
Put a fence though. So I'll tell one little story. I was in Kansas City, Missouri, and we stayed overnight and because we wanted to be close to the airport. And I'm walking around this neighborhood and it has exactly this. And I'm walking through like between houses to get from street to street. I'm like, this is exactly what I imagined this to be. And some of them were further apart, some of them were more narrow, and that they were lined with shrubs and stuff. And it made getting around the area, the community, much easier.
Though I just want to make a comment though about the fence. Just the scale that you're dealing with here though, and if that is only 10 feet wide, then if both homeowners on lot 7 and 8 put up fences to guard, you'd have a wall with a 10-foot wide.
Real.
So
I'm with Lou on this one actually, and I think putting it down, and I think putting it in the reserve area. I don't know if we're going to be doing violence to the reserve area by putting a path in there.
Or just leave it the option open.
I wouldn't mind that being the option.
Yeah.
But I just would like to avoid the folks having to be flat up against Pantego. It is a state highway.
Okay. Well, I think access is important, and so I would be in favor of. I mean, Eric, I hate to open a can of worms here, but I wonder if you wouldn't leave a wider, make that reserve area actually go up to the end of the cul-de-sac 50 feet wide and reconfigure the lots. You'd be gaining area. I mean, sorry, it's late in the game, but if you object to this plan, I think access is important. Frankly, I'm a minority. I don't think we should limit it to just the people in the subdivision.
I did crunch the numbers, thinking about that. Keep in mind, so you see this wedge-shaped lot 8. This frontage here on the road is 48 feet. So if you did 50 feet, you'd basically be going up the middle there. There really is no way to redraw the subdivision map that doesn't result in losing a lot. And that's one less family in town that needs an affordable home.
But that 50 feet wouldn't have to be just an access. It could be part of the reserved area. Can you then extend further into part of the other reserved area?
CPF.
Well, or maybe not because of the way it was purchased.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough. We already, the yield again, I guess, what was it again? It was 24. Technically the yield of the number of lots is 24, and you could only fit 16 on the property just because of the bend. You need an appropriate road, all of that stuff. I think it was brought to this board. I know it was in front of the town board many times when we were in the very preliminary stages of designing this, of laying it out in a way where we could maximize the number of lots, and not have them be way too small and have it make sense. I don't think there's really any way that you're going to be able to provide that directly off the cul-de-sac. I had drawn originally in those preliminary sketches one that had basically the cul-de-sac terminating at the end here, but the result of that is that you just don't have enough room. You really need to utilize that road frontage around the side of the cul-de-sac if you're going to get that many lots. So yeah, I mean, I guess we could go right back to the drawing board and start the subdivision from stage one.
If you looked at it, I certainly trust your.
Yeah, but I mean, I have rolls of different where I sat there and laid out all the, I think it's inevitable that we would lose a lot, and I think that this is, I think this map is, I think it does everything that we kind of want for a sort of modest affordable housing subdivision.
I would be in favor of the access then on the north, because I don't think it's practical to walk up the street to Pantego and then back.
What about the reserve area? Going through the reserve area?
Well, you're walking in the wrong direction for most of the time for many of the lots.
It's effectively the same as walking to the road.
That's the thing. I don't think I agree with Eric on that one. There's a sidewalk there. It's not like you're crossing a dangerous road. You're walking a little bit further, also in the wrong direction.
Sounds like we have 5 different ideas.
Well, to be clear, I understand. I'm not imposing any one opinion. I just think that there should be some access to the north. If you, the applicant, feels that the best version is the one proposed, then I'd be for that. And I do think, for what it's worth, it'd be better to just say explicitly it's opened up so the people who are inhabiting the lots know what's there, as opposed to maybe later something pops up, which would be a lot worse.
I guess my concern, again, I totally agree in principle, the idea of having, that access up there. The big issue here is just a matter of scale. In principle, it's great. In practice, I'm not sure that it works. But I just mentioning of, walking around and all that. If this was a cul-de-sac, a bunch of lots that were along the same road and there was a park next door, the big public park, it would be the same thing. You'd basically just be walking down the road and then walking next door to go up to the park. We're not talking a great length here of road. So I just feel like sandwiching that access and burdening whomever it's going to be that lives on lot 7 and 8 is less desirable than the people that living in the subdivision taking a walk down the road, walking to the sidewalk and walking next door if they want to walk up to that.
What is that length, Eric?
Yeah, that's
Okay. So let me just add here. Well, this is probably about 750 feet.
Yeah, I mean,
Each lot is just about 110 feet of frontage, those lots along the
so if
right-hand
somebody
side.
going for a walk in the trails, he has to walk an extra 750 feet down and then another 1,500 feet. Yeah, I mean, to create all those other burdens just so that someone doesn't have to walk when they're going on a hike. They don't have to walk 1,500 feet. I think it's ridiculous.
What do you think a young person living in lot 10 who wants to get into the trails and go northeast? What do you think they're going to do? You think they're going to walk a quarter of a mile out of their way?
They're going to walk across their neighbor's yard.
Yeah,
They're gonna climb the fence.
well,
Basically,
keep that in mind too, the way that this is laid out. The most burdened in that sense, although I don't really even think it's a burden, especially lot 1 and lot 2, which are right here, we can walk around. But all of these lots abut this 50-foot wide flag
No,
strip
they're
on the
not the
western
issue. It's the
side.
folks on the east side.
Yeah.
So this affects 6 lots.
Okay.
Yes, but basically, so lot 6 would be the most burdened in that sense, because that's the only one that doesn't immediately abut the reserved area on the subject property. So lots 6 and 5, are up at the end of the cul-de-sac and would have to come down. Lots 1, 2, 3, maybe less so 4. We're not really talking a huge distance here. You're talking about 500, 400 feet to walk down a road and then walk up to the trail that's next door to the property.
A road without a sidewalk.
Yeah, it's a cul-de-sac that only has 16 lots on it.
As opposed to putting the trail
Well, I think-
next to somebody all the time.
This is not gonna be
probably have the
this is not gonna be a
information.
traffic area.
Okay, do you have what you need yet?
Huh?
Well, it was your vote.
Well, you have to let me know what the
I was
preliminary
trying to
map's
avoid
gonna look
this.
like, so.
All right, so somebody, Randy.
Well, isn't there a question, Sam? at the end?
There is a
Yeah.
question, but it doesn't, I don't know if it gets us where we want to be. Does the planning board agree to remove the resident-only open space access?
Yes.
Actually, no.
No.
Well, we're talking about that,
Yes.
the north.
Qualified with, if there's a mechanism for us to provision for it, but not necessarily.
Well, that's a separate question. That's a separate.
That's where I'm at.
I'm the,
So
Yeah, at the, we actually could have had this entire conversation at the final subdivision. It really, though, does make more sense if, you're going to be drawing something on the map to add the easement. So we went ahead and did that. But just, this is specifically in reference to if the board wants to consider allowing a trail through the front reserved area. It wouldn't change the configuration of the map. It would just be the wording of the conditions of approval.
Oh, yeah, I kind of like that. All right, so
Bingo.
all right, the first question then is going to be whether or not we want to eliminate that access.
We don't.
Remove the resident-only access. If that removal is voted down, then we can have the vote on whether or not it should be, what's the word, dedicated but not open, or
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
included in the map.
included in the map but not open. That'd be the next vote. And
Well, let's do the votes.
Well, we're not gonna
Good.
vote though. It should, the decision about opening.
well, that's a second thing. The first,
We're creating
the first question is.
the map having
Right,
the.
does the planning board agree to remove the resident-only open space access? All those in favor
Yes.
of removing the open space
I'm
access?
the only part.
No, you're not. There's two.
Oh,
There's two. All those, so now, so five by, well, now you don't have to ask the reverse. So the board does not agree to remove the resident-only open space access. Now, does the board agree that the residents-only open space access should not be, should be, what, is the word dedicated but not open?
Already
We'll
owned.
make it the decision of the town.
It'll just be, it'll be a paper access.
Okay. All right, so does the board vote that that be a paper access? We'll come up with that. Now that we voted for it, I'll vote for yes. Okay, so,
I want it to be real access, but it's okay.
all right, so then so it's 1, 4 paper access, we're going to 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 to 2. Okay, there you go.
Should we vote on whether the language of the southern reserve on the west should allow for a trail to be built through the reserved area?
I'm for that.
Again, it doesn't have to be done, but
Well, maybe we're in the territory of looking at the final to see what comes of the first one.
This is just a preliminary. He can have.
Randy, would you want to
Yeah.
preserve both?
Yeah,
I mean, that's-
actually, we may not need to vote on that. You can.
Yeah, you don't have to, but if you
Well,
want to
language-
discuss it and give us some direction for the final, that's fine for when we're
the
preparing to.
language of the easement over that reserved area will say, you know, this is a reserved area, you can ride horses through here, you can't ride horses through, here. You know,
To that, there's no parking on the street, right?
I'm sorry?
There's no parking on the street?
No,
There will be
not
no
currently.
parking. So if there was an access on the southern end, you wouldn't have people pulling into the street, parking, and then using that access.
no. I mean, it's to be determined. The town board has discussed maybe putting a couple of parking spaces here for the
Okay.
general public so that they can access that rear CPF area. But that's certainly not already determined, and that's something that would come down the
So
road.
maybe when you come back with the final, you have like 2, and we can shoot it around.
Well, I mean, really with the preliminary, you want the map to be the map. And basically, it sounds like what the planning board is saying is that they want this to be the map. But we can come to you with, the options as far as the wording of the document. I'm just making that clear. It's not like 2 maps or 2 sketches. It's that map, but with, a discussion
Let me
about
understand,
where
is
public
there-
access
Is there
would
much
be.
sentiment on the board for a southern access to the easement, to the scenic easement?
we're just talking about leaving the
I don't find that
option
necessary.
open.
Yeah, it's as simple as in.
Eric's point, it doesn't change the math.
It doesn't
Yes,
change the map.
exactly.
Exactly, but
The other one is a map
Why
issue.
not leave the option open for future?
We are already though, what I'm saying.
I think,
The
I think a
infinite
path,
wisdom of
No, but
future.
Randy, I think that we are. It's already reserved area.
I think,
Yeah, but sometimes they prohibit trails.
I think a path is gonna be created naturally by the residents of this area. That's gonna walk right through and take the shortest road. So,
Through lots 10.
through the.
and 14.
Let's go over
I
to
climbed
Sam's
a- I
house and
climbed a
cut
few
through
fences
it.
when I was in Illinois, so-
I'm way over on the side. All right, okay, so you have what you need,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Okay, all right, now we're gonna move into the public hearings. Now, we have 2 public hearings on. One is at Cottages. Randy, you haven't spoken, but we're gonna read that one in. And the other one's Sylvan Realty. Sharon, that's yours. I should say that further on in tonight's meeting, where enjoy these, because these are the last 7 PM public hearings that this board is doing. We are, as of this night, going to have before us a So we're going to schedule a public hearing on 221 Panago Road. And that public hearing, also to be read in by Randy, will call for a 6:30. And in other words, at the time of the beginning of our meeting, public hearing. So that this stuff of having the public hearing a half an hour after our meeting starts and us having to kind of back into 7 o'clock, and sometimes involving very slow readings of boards of review to get us to that 7 o'clock number, will be a thing of the past. And this will mean that folks who want to speak will need to get here at 6:30, and they'll be able to get out at, well, earlier than it had to start at 7. It will also mean that on those occasions that the public hearing doesn't draw public comment, will be done by 6:45 maybe, and we'll be on to our regular meeting. But for now, we have 2 public hearings that have been noticed for 7 PM. The first is Montauk Sunset Cottages. Randy.
Jurisdiction first.
After? That means I have to
Maybe
read
we'll-
it, and she says no.
Maybe we'll change that too. Maybe we'll, come on. Go ahead.
Public hearing notice, take notice that a public hearing will be held before the East Hampton Town Planning Board at Town Hall, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, July 26, 2023 at 7 PM, or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard, to consider the application of Montauk Sunset Cottages LLC site plan special permit to demolish all of the existing upland improvements and construct a new 6,737 square foot, 2-story residence in a similar location to the residence to be demolished, and a 16 by 56 foot swimming pool. The project proposes relocation of 3 cottages and renovating the remaining 11 cottages. The existing driveway is to be reconstructed with 20 parking spaces proposed. The property contains 166,119.96 square feet, 3.81 acres, and is located on the west side of East Lake Drive, Montauk, and is situate in an A residence harbor protection overlay district, zoning district, as shown on the official zoning map of the town of East Hampton, and is identified on the Suffolk County tax map as parcel 322, 13.1 and 13.2. Subject application is classified as an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, Part 617 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, and Chapter 128 Environmental Quality Review of the Town Code. A survey prepared by James P. Walsh, LSPC, dated revised September 20, 2022. A set of plans prepared by Delandro Andrew Engineering, dated March 9th, 2023, including existing conditions and demolition plan C1, proposed septic plan C2, sanitary system number 1, detail C2A, sanitary system number 1, detail C2B, sanitary system number 2, detail C2C, water supply plan C3, water supply plan detail C3A, electrical supply plan C4, drainage plan C5, erosion and sediment control plan C6, fire apparatus access and parking plan C7A, ADA access details C7B, and ADA access details C7C. A landscape plan prepared by Summerhill Landscapes Incorporated, dated revised December 27th, 2021, and a landscape lighting cut sheet prepared by Shine Design and distribution dated January 10th, 2022 are available for inspection at the planning board offices, 300 Panago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York. The public hearing will be held live and in person by the planning board and will be available electronically by video and teleconferencing and will be televised on local TV, LTV, Channel 22, and available for live stream on LTV website, https://www.ltveh.org. The public shall be permitted to appear in person, but may also provide comments on the matter being heard by calling 351-888-6331. Any person or party wishing to be heard with respect to the foregoing may do so in person or by agent or by attorney or by calling to the live stream or by written comment addressed to the planning board, 300 Panago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York, 11937. Comments may also be submitted to the planning board by email to planningboard@ehamptonny.gov. All comments must be received by the planning board by the date and time of the public hearing, dated June 28th, 2023. Samuel Kramer, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Nancy, do we have jurisdiction?
Yes, we do. I reviewed the affidavit of service and posting, and it does appear that it was properly noticed and we have jurisdiction.
Thank you very much. Eric, are you?
Yeah, sure.
Gonna take over from this?
As you heard from the public hearing notice, this property contains numerous cottages and a single-family residence. The residence is proposed to be enlarged. The cottages are to be renovated and 3 of them relocated. This is the site plan that's up on the screen. However, it doesn't show up terribly well on the screen. It's quite busy. So what I'm going to do is just jump over to the engineering plans and show you first. And again, this one's a little difficult to see, but this is basically the existing site conditions. However, it's almost impossible to see, but shaded in gray here are 3 of the cottages up on the northern end of the property. Again, this property abuts Lake Montauk and is situated off East Lake Drive. This is the proposed renovation plan, including showing the sanitary details, but perhaps the clearest picture for the public is the landscaping plan that shows the proposed relocated cottages and their configuration, as well as obviously the landscaping. And then you can also see the new parking area. And I said the parking area on the eastern side of the property. And you can see the residence is on the southern end. This is flipped 90 degrees. North is to your left, the residence here and the swimming pool. We also have lighting plans and some other documents. If the public needs them, just let me know and I'll put them up.
Okay, thanks very much. All right, the members of the public who may wish to speak, you'll have 3 minutes each. So, and once everybody who's here and then on LTV has had an opportunity to speak, then if anyone wants an additional 3 minutes, they'll be afforded that. Matt, do you have anybody in queue?
I have 0 calls on the line. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, is there anybody present who wishes to be heard with respect to this application? Only once, twice? You'd like to speak on it?
Sure.
Please step up and let us have your name. Please spell your name and your address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Kevin Shores. Spell it.
Yeah, please.
KevinSheurs.
Okay.
I live at 32 East Lake Drive, which is across the street from this property.
You have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, first time doing this. I don't want to push too hard, but yeah, mostly just have questions around what this property is going to be. You know, it's a much larger house, lots of units, 20 parking spots, raises concerns of just noise and lots of in and out, and just like security concerns with 2 young kids across the street. That's mainly it. I met the owners when they bought the place and showed us around, and at the time was told it was purchased for their kids and friends. And yeah, I've heard kind of rumors that this is maybe going to be an artist's kind of retreat. This sounds more like a potential resort, motel, hotel kind of deal. So yeah, generally just concerns on a lack of clarity of what this is going to be.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else who wishes to be heard with respect to this application? Okay. Hearing none, if the applicant would like to speak, the applicant is shaking their head no. Okay. In that case, Randy, if you'd make a motion.
Can I say something really quickly, just as you mentioned it was your first time? We don't typically address concerns tonight, but there'll be a wrap up at which, your concerns will be addressed by the planning department and we'll consider in our final review, but we're not disregarding your comments. It's just, there's no back and forth in these public hearings.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for mentioning that.
Good point.
Okay, go ahead, Randy.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. Now we're going to move on to Sylvan Realty, LLC. Sharon.
All right. Take notice that a public hearing will be held before the East Hampton Town Planning Board at Town Hall, 159 Pantico Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, July 26th, 2023 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter, as this matter may be heard, to consider the application of Sylvan Realty LLC site plan special permit to change the use of and expand a non-conforming building by proposing a first floor retail space, second floor office space, 2 second floor affordable apartments, paved parking areas, and extensive landscaping. The project consists of 6,881 square foot first floor retail space for a wet retail market and 3,200 square foot second floor for office space and 2 second floor affordable apartments, and a 555 square foot basement. The property contains 26,153 square feet, which is 0.803 of an acre, and is located on the south side of 3 Mile Harbor Road, East Hampton, and is situate in a neighborhood business zoning district as shown on the official zoning map of the town of East Hampton, and is identified on the Suffolk County tax map parcel as 300-161-4-9. Subject application is classified as an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, Part 617 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, and Chapter 128 of the Town Code. The site plan prepared by George Walter Surveyors, PC, dated revised June 20th, 2023. A set of plans dated June 21, 2023, including cover sheet, index, 3D renders, site plan, basement floor plan, first floor plan, second floor plan, elevation, south elevation, east elevation, west elevation, north elevation, south elevation, east. I guess it's just the different floors. West elevation, north elevation, exterior finish schedule, and material board, proposed lighting and schedule, 25 through 26, EF-1 spec sheet, EF-2 spec sheet, EF-3 spec sheet, EF-4 spec sheet, pyramid diagram and area diagram, and building plans, building elevations, A200 and schematic pyramid sections, A300 prepared by Create Architecture Planning and Design, PLLC, dated June 21st, 2023, are available for inspection at the Planning Board offices, 300 Pantico Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York. The public hearing will be held live and in person by the Planning Board and will be available electronically by video and teleconferencing, and will be televised on local TV, Channel 22, and available for live stream on the LTV website. The public shall be permitted to appear in person, but may also provide comments on the matter being heard by calling 351-888-6331. Any party or person or party wishing to be heard with respect to the foregoing may do so in person or by agent or by attorney or by call-in to the live stream or by written comment addressed to the Planning Board, 300 Pantico Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York, 11937. Comments may also be submitted to the Planning Board by email to planningboard@ehhamptonny.gov. All comments must be received by the Planning Board by the date and time of the public hearing, June 28th, 2023. Samuel Kramer, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Nancy, you have yours.
Yes, we do, Chair. I reviewed the affidavit of service and posting, and it does appear that it was properly noticed and you have jurisdiction.
There we go.
Okay, so this site plan application actually already had a public hearing. However, as a result of a number of the public comments, it was realize that along the north side of the property, which is to the right as you look at this plan, that a pyramid variance would have been required. There were some other changes that were discussed by the planning board with the applicant. This set of revised plans, which does a very good job of highlighting these changes. These plans have been submitted. I'll just quickly go through them. So what you see here is again, north is to the right, retracted north side of the building. This is the that's the second floor. And then what you see is on the left, the previous application and configuration, and on the right are the changes. So this plan, again, the second floor plan is shown. This is a reduction of the terrace area on the second story behind the office and the apartments. There's 2 apartments on the second story. Again, this visualization is the second floor. It is a portion of the terrace infilled, the terrace for the one of the apartments, and changed to office space. But with this reconfiguration, it's noted that there's no change in gross floor area of the total office space, which is still proposed to be 3,200 square feet. Again, showing you the second floor plan. This is the basically, I'll just go back, that terrace for apartment A, now that it's been relocated or removed and changed to office space. Again, showing you on the left-hand side that terrace being removed, but then it essentially being relocated to the northeastern side of the building. And then these are elevation plans that show you the differences with removing the terraces and some other changes, including a 5-foot reduction in overall height. Again, the top shows you the previous application or previous proposal, and the bottom is the revised. Same deal here, showing the 5-foot height reduction, the different configurations of the terraces, but then also a facade change to the doorways on that apartment, doorways and windows. And then this is the west elevation, showing basically the same changes there. And then, so this is the north elevation, the back of the building. Again, this was the area where it was identified that a pyramid variance would have been needed under the previous configuration. And again, you can see the prior proposal on the top, and then the changes highlighted below. And then this is a diagram of non-conforming area of the building. So I have this. I have the other site plan. I have the site plan and the other site plan application documents available for the public, and just let me know, and I will go between the visuals.
Thanks very much. Matt, is there anybody in queue on this?
Yes, you have one caller as of right now.
Okay, very good. Well, first we'll see if anyone in the audience wants to be heard. Is there anybody here tonight in the audience who wants to be heard on this application, on Sylvan Realty? Your name and address.
Thanks, Bill. Yes, thank you. Good evening, board, and to the applicant and his counsel. My name is Jane, Jaine. Last name is Meering, Mehring. And I live at 32 Ocean Lane in Amagansett. I spoke at the prior hearing, and I have resubmitted into the record everything that I've written to the board, and I'm not going to go over into the second 3 minutes this time. The one thing, there's just 2 things I wanted to drill down on. One is about the 2 affordable apartments. So I would like to ask the board to consider making a stronger condition around those 2 apartments. First off, I think the way it reads now is that I'm going to call it an affidavit or a registration around the affordable apartments would have to be satisfied as a condition of the C of O. And I would like to propose that it has to be a condition of the building permit. That's my first question. Number two, I have not seen the format for what these sort of affidavits or registrations look like. I believe that there's a phrase in our comprehensive plan that says that affordable housing should be affordable in two senses. It should be affordable in terms of the rent that is charged relative to market rate apartments. And number two, it should be lived in by people who need affordable housing. And I think what's missing in this is that though the rent will be staked as, you know, whatever is the right number per local numbers for, I guess, moderate income, it is not clear to me that there'll be a requirement that the tenants in those apartments also income qualify to be in true need of affordable housing. So that is another proposal that I would like to focus on. With that. Aside from the affordable housing, I have made a pretty lengthy case over my letters that, you know, with links and timestamps to prior ZBA hearings, with the idea that it needs to go back to the ZBA. When you had a work session follow up to last public hearing, Tina from the planning department recommended to the board it needed to go back. I believe the board voted on the idea of it going back, and that's where it's left. I have heard perhaps subsequent to that, our town attorney sort of said, no, doesn't need to go back. So I'm just leaving it out there again. I'm a process person, and that's, again, I'm only interpreting the code one way, but that is, you know, having watched all the hearings very, very closely. And then within that, this point was made last time, I make it again, and I'm thinking that terrace is still there on the bottom.
20 seconds.
Yeah, that terrace that the variance granted for the apartment was for the apartment and not for an open air terrace, and that should be relooked at. So those in conjunction with everything else I've submitted.
3 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else present in the room who'd like to be heard with respect to Sylvan Realty LLC? Matt?
Yes.
Matt, you could open up the phone lines and let's see if this caller is calling in regarding Sylvan Realty.
Okay, so we're going to unmute last 4 digits, 4602. You are live.
Hello, are you here?
Good evening, Plan Board.
Your name,
Good
please?
evening,
And
Planning Board members. My name is Betsy Petrosky, Petroski, and I reside full-time on Jackson Street in East Hampton. I appreciate the opportunity again before the Planning Board to speak, and that the applicant's architects team realized the pyramid law issue with its prior elevations and the submission of new plans. I maintain the bone of contention that the applicant is taking advantage of the pre-existing non-conforming footprint while, quote, they are to knock down the existing building and build a new building, unquote, from a letter of notification that my neighbors and I received recently, placed in our mailbox unsigned. For this new building to be 10,000 square feet in its inappropriate location, so close to the north-facing, west-facing, and east-facing property lines, it will appear oversized in its mass and scale, which also creates concern about the aesthetic for a newly blacktop paved area for 48 or so parking spaces that will take up more than 2/3 of the entire site. This proposal is out of character to the neighborhood with this massive hardscape, and because of the topography of the lot, to potentially create flooding issues as well as traffic problems, as big box delivery trucks will not be able to park into these parking spots during business hours and have no choice but to dangerously border 3 Mile Harbor Road in its right of way. Because we don't have disclosure as to what the uses of this 10,000 square foot retail and commercial complex will be, as well as the operations, this could be a logistical nightmare for the local residents and all travelers in the areas heading in all 4 directions. That said, I want to point out some discrepancies and issues what appear to me with the new proposed plans and elevations that were submitted prior to this meeting. Most importantly, the new elevations for the north-facing side of the building in each rendering presented does not allow the viewer to see what the north side of the building will look like because of computer-aided fake landscaping screening blocking the elevation. Only visible is a portion of the upper second story with windows or possibly doors. There are clear glass lantern lighting fixtures shown. They may be dark sky compliant, but based on the manufacturer's notation in the plans that the clear glass is designed to cast a soft ambient light over a wide area. Why would these wide area coverage lights be necessary on the north-facing elevations? So unless the north-facing elevation renderings are more complete and less obscured, we don't know what's going on the backside of this complex. Will there be doors and a second-story decking that warrant lighting on the backside that will shine outward for more than 6 months of the year when the deciduous trees lose their leaves and affect the north and east-facing neighbors? There are other elevation discrepancies with regards to the PVC spindle railings on the second west side story, and also there are two large windows that look to be an exterior door with gooseneck light fixtures on the exit above on the east side of the first story that exit out to the east story portion of the building with no railings, as well as there are no disclosures for HVAC units on the building. Before moving forward, I recommend that the planning board review the plans closely and ask that these discrepancies and concerns will be rectified, and to please reconsider the oversized 10-foot square foot building and overpaid lot proposed and how this will impact the environment and around the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, no. Is anybody, last chance, for any matters, any members of the public? If not, does the applicant wish to be heard?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Richard Whalen, Whalen Fowler PLLC in Amagansett on behalf of the applicant. The applicant is Sylvan Realty. The owner is actually here with a nice white jacket there. That's Rick Van Nenschoten. Rick has owned this property for 25 years. There are a number of other people here, not speakers, individuals involved here. I do want somebody behind me to speak, and that'll be John Harder from Atlantic Traffic and Design. We just want to address the traffic issue because it has come up before. But we have Frank Campione, the architect, Walter Beal, the project manager, I think Ben Plum of Bowling Engineering here as well. A couple of things preliminary. I just want to clarify a couple of things at the outset. Eric said that we made change. That comments at the last public hearing led to the realization that there was a permit law violation. Actually, nobody caught that. We were looking at the plans. There was some questions that were asked from the planning board, and I was just re-reviewing the application. I said, I don't think this is right. And then we realized we had a permit law violation. So that caused us we had to redesign the application to avoid the permit law. We brought it back to you. You decided you want to have another public hearing, and that's why we're here tonight. And there's also one other thing which I'll clarify with regard to the terraces on the apartments. All the terracing on the apartments has been removed. It also came up after the last hearing that there was a legal question as to whether the zoning board variance would cover the terrace for the east apartment. That's the rear yard setback. And to avoid the issue, we said, all right, we're going to take the terrace out. And then we took the terrace out for the other apartment just so we didn't have one apartment with a terrace and one without them. So I think what Eric was referring to was the May 30th submission, and there was a later submission. So with that, let me just make a few points here. The zoning history of the property, just so you understand where this came from. This building was originally built as a bowling alley in the 1950s. By the 1970s, it had been converted to a nightclub with a restaurant and lounge, basically what it still is today. Application was made to the town board to rezone the property back in 2005. August 2005, an application was made to rezone the property, which then was zoned commercial industrial to neighborhood business. Traffic was among the factors that the town board considered, and in fact, there was a traffic analysis that was submitted to the town board in 2008 that was done on behalf of the applicant by Dunn Engineering. The town board approved the rezoning from CI to neighborhood business in February 2009 after about 3.5 years of review. As a consequence of that rezoning, the applicant proposed to, as part of the rezoning, a declaration of covenants and restrictions that would limit future uses on the property. This is what it says. The declarations, once this project is approved and built, nightclub use is forever prohibited on the property. Although nightclubs are allowed in an MB zone, nightclub would be a prohibited use on this property under the covenants. No restaurant can be approved on the property unless it's fully compliant with parking, meaning no parking variance, no fees in lieu of parking. You can't have a 24-hour restaurant or retail store on the property. And by 24-hour, that means you can't operate more than 22 hours a day. That's spelled out in the declaration. And fast food restaurants are prohibited. Those are all things under the covenant that will take effect if and when a new building is built on the property. The changes to the application since you were heard in April. And these were basically changes that were made to comply with the permit law after we had realized that problem. The building, the second floor, remember the first floor is basically the existing building. It's just going to be reused. The first floor remains as it is. The second floor was retracted from the north side by about 8 feet. That narrows the frontage that faces through Marlborough Road from about 55 feet 10 inches to 47 feet 10 inches. And we did infill apartment space, patio space that had to deal with apartment A. The outdoor terrace on the north side of the second floor has been removed. And a point here, this is something that I think was Betsy Petrosky may have made. Apparently, we didn't remove the lighting, the outdoor lighting for those terraces from the plan. So we will do that. In other words, there was some outdoor lighting for the terrace on the north side of the building. We'll correct that and remove that lighting. Other than that, you can't really see the north side of this building. The Firmo Cullum machine shop is on the north side between this building and Jackson Street. So you're not really going to see too much of it. The building was lowered in height by 5 feet. You're in a neighborhood business zone. The allowed maximum height, even for a flat roof building, is 30 feet. We are at 24 feet. The reduction by 5 feet was done in part to deal with the permit law issue, but the architect, Frankie Campione, who's here tonight, tells me that actually reduced the volume, the mass or volume of the building by about 17%. And finally, as I noted, we removed the outdoor terraces for both of the apartments. The ZBA, first of all, comments made by Jane Merring on the issue of the affordable apartments. I don't have a problem with anything she said other than we want to follow whatever the town's protocol is. But the intention is both that whoever is there is limited in terms of what the rent that they can be charged, and also they should be rent qualified. So I have no disagreement with her at all on those points, other than whatever the practice and policy and protocol will be of the town housing office. That's what we would follow. The ZBA determination was granted in January 27, 2022. They granted 2 of the 3 variances the applicants sought. We got an 11-space parking variance. The applicant has done nothing. We haven't changed the floor area or the nature of the use on either floor since that variance was granted. So there is no basis to review the parking variance. We have the same relief now that we needed at the time the zoning board acted. And with regard to the other variance that was granted, had to do with the setback from the rear or east property line to the second floor apartments. First of all, at the time that variance was heard, both apartments faced to the east, and there was more floor area within that. Both apartments were facing east. The applicant, when they revised the building design, subsequently now has the apartments stacked on an east-west direction. So the zoning board granted a 26.3-foot rear yard setback variance in January of 2012, which would allow the eastern apartments to be built up to 23.7 feet from the east property line. We're now 29 feet from the east property line, and there's only 1 apartment. And we've reduced the floor area within the setback. So we're not even fully complying with the variance that was granted by the zoning board in terms of the eastern, setback for the apartment. The last thing I just, hit on quickly, and I think John Harder will, we want to kind of lay your mind at rest somewhat on regarding traffic. You did get a letter from Lisa LaCory in April regarding the proposed traffic generation. The figures used in the letter, and I think John Harder will elaborate on this, were completely wrong. It appears that they used from what John has told me, it looks like the figures used came from the IT manual for a convenience store with gasoline pumps. They projected 330 trips per hour, which when you break it at the peak hour, which would mean every 10 seconds a car coming in or out. That is utterly impossible. That would never happen on this site. And I'll give you a comparison. You have a very similar thing that you can compare this to, and that's Daymark's. Daymark's Deli is on the same road. Granted, it's further north, but it's also near some busy intersections, Abraham's Path and coming out of Northwest on Springy Banks Road. Daymark's is not that different in size from this proposed building. I'm talking the retail store only. Daymark's doesn't have an office upstairs, but the retail floor area at Daymark's is 5,360 square feet. Our retail space is actually 6,608. Some of the first floor is devoted to lobby to go upstairs. Their retail is 5,360 on the first floor. Ours is 6,608. But they put some of their business uses in the basement. They have a basement that's approximately larger than ours, actually. They have a 6,155 square foot basement, of which 720 feet is gross floor area, including an office, a catering kitchen, and bathrooms. Bottom line is when you add it up, they're at around 6,000 square feet of GFA. We're at around 6,600 square feet of GFA. And nobody here would say that they generate 330 trips an hour at their peak hour. So, I'm going to let John address that, but we believe that the retail use here could benefit the town broadly. If it intercepts some shoppers who are coming from Springs or parts of Northwest Woods and they don't have to travel on into the congested center of East Hampton Village, I think that's a benefit to the town and the community as a whole and would be a good thing traffic-wise overall. So if you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them.
It's a public hearing, so.
Okay.
And the comment that the applicant generally makes after the public hearing relates to the comments made by the public. So.
Yeah. All right. So I think I've addressed the main issues that came up.
I know
But if you had any,
you have other speakers as well.
one other, Mr. Harder will be the only other speaker.
And he'll be addressing comments that were made by the public.
And yes, and specifically to the traffic report that, was submitted.
Hi, good evening. My name is John Harder, Harter. I'm principal of Atlantic Traffic. We have offices, one of which is in Melville, New York, 275 Broad Hollow Road. And we were asked to look at the site traffic and project it for the existing and the proposed condition and compare that. And it's also known as trip generation. So try not to bore you too much, but just talk about how traffic engineers, planners come up with trip generation projections. For land uses like we're talking about, you would use the gross floor area and calculate that based on the Institute of Transportation Engineer, or ITE's trip generation manual. And that's a very large manual. It's now digital online, but it compiles many different land uses and categorizes them based on the description of the land uses. And we believe from looking at the April 7 letter that Rick had referred to that went to the planning board, there was no description of the land use exactly, but it suggested that our land use would generate in the weekday evening peak hour. So traffic engineers look at hours typically when we're doing trip generation projections, that the site would generate 167 vehicles, or that would translate to 2 trips for each vehicle. So about 330 trips an hour, which is a very high volume. So as Rick noted, we think that came from convenience store land use within the ITE. Our calculations utilize the supermarket land use category in ITE, and we came up with an increase over the existing conditions of about 55 trips on a weekday lunchtime peak hour, and then about 15 trips in the evening peak hour. So very small increase. ITE suggests that when you're below 100 trips in a peak hour, that a traffic study typically is not done. So you have a significant increase if you're over that 100 peak hour trips. So we feel we're well below that. A little more on the different land uses. So ITE, the 11th edition of trip generation, published in 2021, is the latest compilation of different land use trip generation data. And the supermarket category, which we feel is very appropriate, is land use 850. And that does include supermarkets as small as 5,200 square feet, 6,600 square feet. So it's in line with what we're proposing. And then in terms of the convenience store, that's known as land use 851, a much more intensive use. It's usually 24 hours. And if you look at the database for a weekday evening peak hour, the IT compiled 39 different research site data points. So actual counts from 39 different sites. And those sites range from about 800 square feet to about 5,500 square feet. So really, you know, we don't fall in that size. We're a smaller market. We're above that range of what ITE indicated. And the reality is when convenience stores of our size or somewhat greater are now built, they always include fuel. So to correct Rick, so really we feel that the calculation was done based on a convenience store on its own. And once you get to the size of our facility or bigger, every developer, anyone who's doing C-stores always adds gas at that size. They're going to be quite a bit bigger than 5,500. So I think for those reasons, really this supermarket category we used is appropriate. We're below a significant increase. And really a traffic study is not appropriate or necessary. We're doing all the right things. We've got the access. You know, today it looks like, when I went to the site, it looks like at one point there was actually 3 different curb cuts. And there's also a pullover wide shoulder at the northern portion of the property. We're doing the right thing. We're consolidating that all to a single driveway at the south end of the site, which is away from there's an opposing residential street across from the north end of our property. So that's a good thing. So we're also ending, I guess, the late night business and activity that happens with the club that, you know, this site would not have in the future. So I think all good things from a traffic perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
John, can you just submit your CV to give them?
I do, yes.
Submit it through the planning department.
You just want to have this curriculum vitae, so you know his credentials.
Well, put it in through the record, you know, through the planning department.
Thank you.
No disrespect.
Yeah, I'm a licensed engineer in the state and about 10 others, and I've worked in traffic engineering
We don't
for
take
10 years.
things at the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the applicant's been heard, so Sharon, make a motion. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, all right, now we're going to move on to 2 more items on in the work session. One is the application for the subdivision review. My bad. For site plan review. 3 Mile Harbor Marina 2. Michael, it's yours. Eric, you're our utility man today. Mr. Bennett, you're here on that. And after that, then we'll hear from they're out there.
All set?
All set.
Okay, the application consists of the construction of a 500 square foot second-story addition to a 2,050 square foot one-story marine store labeled as Building A, the demolition of a 3,745 square foot boat repair shop, and construction of a new 4,347 square foot 1- and 2-story shop, which is Building B, and the construction of a 4,619 square foot addition to a 10,450 square foot boat storage building, or Building C. An approximately 280 square foot second story deck is proposed between buildings A and B. The application also includes the reconstruction of 380 linear feet of bulkhead with an increase in the elevation of 18 inches, reconstruction of the 3-foot wide boardwalk landward or parallel to the bulkhead, and the construction of a 10-foot by 18-foot and 25-foot by 30-foot concrete pads associated with the boat lift and the building and Building B. Excuse me, those concrete pads associated with the boat lift and Building B respectively. The structure proposed in this application are depicted on sheet C1 of the Bennett plan, and a 4-page narrative was also provided to the planning board. The marina is located on the north side of Boatyard Road. The sanitary system consists of a Norweco IA system that was installed subsequent to a site plan and NRSP approval in 2016. And the leaching field for that system is located on a separate property across Boatyard Road. The site is zoned waterfront and is within the Harbor Protection Overlay District. The marina is located within the head of the harbor section of 3 Mile Harbor within a locally significant coastal fish and wildlife habitat and the Peconic Estuary Critical Environmental Area. Land use in the area consists of additional waterfront zoning with a marina use to the west. There's town trustee open space and a public boat launch to the east and north, and some residential land use to the south, and mainly residential land use to the east, which is across 3 Mile Harbor Road. The property is 100% cleared of naturally occurring vegetation. Under SECRA, this is an unlisted action. The applicants have not provided an EAF Part 1, which is mostly a project description. Once that's been submitted, though, it's required legally that that be submitted. Once it is, though, the planning department recommends that the planning board declare lead agency status. So the issues of the application, first, water-dependent uses, wetland setbacks, and dimensional setbacks. Water-dependent uses are exempt from wetland setbacks. That definition has been included in the memorandum. Basically, water-dependent use, quoting from the code here, a use which cannot be conducted or perform its intended purpose unless it is located or carried out near water, such as docking or services of boats, unloading of fish, shipbuilding, or the like. The repair shop and boat storage building are both located 100 feet or farther from the wetlands. The retail store addition is proposed 67 feet from the wetlands, and it is the planning department's position that the eligibility for the setback exemption as a water-dependent use is questionable. The applicant should address the potential eligibility for the exemption at this meeting. The department would not object to the issuance of a wetland setback variance for the proposed addition should a determination be made that it is not eligible for the exemption. The marine store and repair shop are both non-conforming to wetland setbacks. The marine store is also non-conforming to the 10-foot eastern side yard setback and the 25-foot street or front yard setback. The additions proposed to the marine store and boat storage building both appear to comply with property line setbacks. The applicant should clarify this on a revised survey of the property submitted to the planning board. In the resubmission, the applicant should also provide information related to compliance with the pyramid law. With regard to navigation, parking, and drainage, no changes appear to be proposed to site access driveways. The applicant should confirm this if this is the case. Navigation lanes were not shown on the site plan. The parking area throughout the interior of the marina is gravel and undelineated except for the asphalt ADA parking spaces for the boat slips. Parking capacity and calculations have been provided on the site plan and indicate that 89 spaces are required. The parking calculations do not appear to include the retail store, which would include an additional 14 spaces. And then also it should be noted there was a previous site plan that had a different parking calculation on it. Basically, the applicant should clarify the parking calculations on a revised site plan. And then also, as the building is greater than 15,000 square feet, the code requires 2 truck parking spaces. Those should also be provided with adequate space for truck turnaround. There are 5 drainage swales throughout the property, or proposed throughout the property as indicated on the plan. The swales consist of 24 inches of crushed stone on a bed of filter fabric. The planning department will be referring that to the town consulting engineer for review. The lighting plan, there's a lighting plan submitted. 13 fixtures are wall mounted and one of them is a sign light. All fixtures comply with the color temperature requirement of the code. And it appears that all fixtures comply with the lighting policy's foot candle maximums that are recommended in the planning board guidelines for exterior lighting. However, the applicant should submit manufacturer's cut sheets to demonstrate that the design of the fixtures is full cutoff. Also, 3 of the fixtures are proposed to light the path between buildings A and B, and are proposed at heights ranging from 12 feet to 16 feet above ground level. The planning board's guidelines for lighting recommend nothing greater than 12 feet in height, unless a greater mounting height is required. This is Hey, Susan, if you're listening, I think you might want to mute. There you go. Sorry about that. So I believe some of the light fixtures were mounted at greater than 12 feet in height because of the boat storage building, which is a very tall building. The applicant should address that. The sign light does have a slight light trespass issue on the eastern property line of half of a foot candle. And that goes on to the trustee road. The board should determine if a different fixture should be chosen or if the mounting height can be lowered to remedy that problem. With regard to the sanitary system, sanitary details are provided. The sanitary system, which is an IA system, was installed recently in 2019. The system's pre-treatment tank is on site. And basically, just to explain it to you, you can see it on the site. Geez, I haven't been sharing screen. I apologize for that. You can see on the site plan the location of the sanitary system. It's on the bottom of the screen. It's actually not on the subject property. It's on a property that's located on the other side of Boatyard Road. The proposed addition to the buildings is going to require 2 additional leaching galleys in this area. However, it appears that the sanitary calculations meet the health department's design requirements, and it also appears that should they meet the groundwater elevation. And also it should be noted that the allowable generated sanitary flow on the property does not appear to be exceeded. However, it's noted that health department approval will of course be required. And you can see actually in red on that plan the additional leaching galleys illustrated. With regard to the bulkhead and boat slips, the applicant proposes the elimination of 4 boat slips adjacent to the bulkhead, reducing the number of slips from 72 to 68. They also propose an in-place reconstruction with an 18-inch height increase of 380 linear feet of bulkheading. Under the town code, most bulkhead reconstructions on commercially zoned properties do not require site plan review, but only a natural resources special permit. Nonetheless, it should be noted that the bulkhead details on the plans consisted of untreated timber pilings and whalers with vinyl sheathing. The bulkhead height is proposed to increase from an elevation of 4.5 to 6 feet above sea level. The profile also indicates dredging seaward of the bulkhead to a depth of 8 feet, where existing depths vary from 3 to 6 feet. Additional details regarding the locations, volume, and management of the dredging material will be asked for in conjunction with the Natural Resources Special Permit application under review by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Additionally, Army Corps of Engineer and New York State DEC approval will be required. The Fire Marshal has made a comment and requested to see the location and general specs for 3 ADA compliant boat slips and 4 spaces adjacent to them. And then basically in the memorandum, there's a reminder that all the plans need to be under the same title. So basically with all of those issues summarized in this initial evaluation, the application is incomplete pending the resolution of those issues and the submission of the required items.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Proof that you can go home again. Drew? Wrong person. Apologize.
Good evening, Chairman Kramer, members of the Planning Board. My name is Mark Mendelman. My family, my brother, my sister, my other sister, my sister-in-law own and operate 3 Mile Harbor Marina. And we are very, very happy to be here tonight. We submitted the application in December of last year, and we recognize this is a long process, and we're glad that the ball is starting to roll on it. I have prepared a set of slides. I think we have that, and I have 11 copies for everyone to follow along with.
Did the planning department?
I got it.
You got it?
I didn't get the 4-page narrative. Did anybody else?
It's on the website.
It's not on. It's kind of, it wasn't on the website. I read the website.
The important thing is that the planning department had this already.
Yeah.
And it was part of your,
Well, this is a later presentation, but I believe it includes information, but this is an initial evaluation, so.
This is hopefully going to familiarize everyone on the board with what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to do in a more visual way than just through the plans. So first slide is about the use on the property. The previous planning board approval back in 2016 had the nature of the approved use as a marina, a boatyard, and accessory retail stores, boat rentals or fishing station with office space incidental to those listed uses. Basically, if you look at the use table for commercial uses in a waterfront zone, a marina, a boatyard, boat rentals or fishing station are 3 uses that are permitted under that waterfront, in that waterfront zone. There's a use known as a recreational marina, which the memo says is an existing use. That's not correct. A recreational marina is limited to only recreational boats. This is a marina and a boatyard with commercial boats that come in all the time. The proposed use covers lots 2, 3, and 10, the lot that's across the road. If you look in the packet from the planning department, you'll see the covenants and restrictions that we had to put on all 3 of those lots and the private road between those lots in order to cross the road for sanitary. We went through that whole process during our previous site plan to prove to the town and to the county that we owned the road and that we didn't need an easement to go under the road with that sanitary line. So we view those lots as one lot together as a whole complex. The proposed use is exactly the same as the existing use that was previously approved. And I put the definitions of these uses in this slide just for the sake of clarity. A marina, facility for berthing and fueling of any type of watercraft. And you look down a little bit, it includes one on-site tackle shop and or marine supplies store shall also be permitted. So the use in building A as a marine supplies store is permitted under the marina use. It's not a separate retail use. The boatyard, fairly self-explanatory, facility for servicing any type of watercraft, providing supplies, provisions, storage. We don't have any fueling facilities. And a fishing station is basically a business selling bait, tackle, etc. to anglers for use on-site or at nearby locations. We do all of those things. Next slide. Just to give you a little bit of a background, this whole complex has been in operation since the 1930s. It's the 3 lots on the private road joined for sanitary. 2019 was 72 slips. There's 4 buildings, building A, B, and C, that we are looking at this site plan to improve. And the 4th building is the clubhouse and bathrooms, which was approved at the previous site plan. Just of note in this slide, the difference between winter and summer. Obviously, winter, all the boats are on land over the parking spaces that would be needed in the summer. Common practice for all boatyards in the Northeast. Next slide. We're off of 3 Mile Harbor Road, as Eric mentioned, boatyards to the west and the south. If you look in the, I don't think that's going to do it on the screen. But if you look in the lower right corner, you'll see the property surrounded to the west by a marina, to the south by a marina. There's 1 residence just to the south of Building A, the marine store, across from the street from Boatyard Road. And the top right picture is a picture across the water from Gardner's Marina looking at the site. Next. So building A, the marine store and the office, is 2,050 square feet currently. It's got the checkout counter, it's got the parts manager's desk, it's got the office for the service department. The dock master station is in there with the radio. It's got a small bathroom, and there's storage areas wherever there's a closet or an open space. It's very, very crowded in there for everybody. It's very busy, and there's a lot of noise and people all the time in there. It's very hard to concentrate. We improved that building in 2018. We put a new skin on it, essentially, with a new roof and new HVAC. So that's the existing condition of building A. Building B, if you look at the picture, second picture down on the right, is a good visual of this is the conglomeration of 3 existing buildings. There's a pole barn, 41-foot by 61-foot pole barn. That's the larger structure to the right of in that picture. That is sharing a common wall with a 27 by 44 dirt floor shed. And there is an 8 by 12 rectangular office joined onto that conglomeration of buildings. That pole barn is sagging in the ridge. All of the footing, the posts that go up are rotted. So the west wall is starting to bow out. Collar ties are undersized and impaired. Trying to repair these structures is really a waste of money, and we are trying to take it down and put something in place that's much better. The interior is exposed rigid foam insulation boards. It has a waste oil heater, which we will reuse, and a little window unit. We can get our marine forklift into the pole barn side of that, but we can't get our travel lift into any of those buildings with a boat on it. Building C, if you look at the 2 photos on the left, the one kind of towards the middle shows the roof lines of building C. It's 2 buildings that came from Montauk. They were old railway buildings, 130 by 37 foot building and a 141 by 41 foot building joined on their long edge. Same thing with the building B, structurally non-standard. All the things are rusty inside. I can't drive a forklift or a travel lift into that building because the roof heights are low on the edges. It has a dirt floor, it's uninsulated, drafty, leaky siding, and extremely poor lighting.
Would it be possible, because, and I hate to call off anything you have to say, but and we had public hearings tonight, can you move into the what you want to do part of the presentation?
Yes.
All right.
But first, I wanted to just address the water dependent use on this slide. So building A is a completely integral part of our marine service operation. The majority of the business that takes place in building A is supporting our service department. So all of that inventory, which includes propellers, shafts, anti-fouling paints, is coming into that store, and most of it's going out onto boats that are being serviced in the yard. A very small portion of the activity in that building is over-the-counter sales to people coming in from outside. Obviously, we still do that, but just to give you an idea of what that use really is. That use, when you think about how heavy some of these items are and getting them to the boats, that's where the water dependency really comes in. These buildings are all a single complex, if you will, of putting boats in certain places and working on them. So that gets to the next point. Buildings B and C are also water dependent. They're water dependent marina boatyard uses, and we can only conduct them if we're close to the water. Parking. So section 255.11.45 has the calculations for marina parking delineated just by the number of slips, 1.25 per boat slip plus 1 per employee. Our previously approved site plan back in 2019, 72 slips, 1.25 spaces per slip, that gets you 90, plus 4 employees, we were at 94. The memo is incorrect at 96. I don't know where that number came from, but we were at 94 previously. Currently, we're at 68. We reduced the number of slips. That gets us to 85 at 1.25 spaces per slip, plus 4 spaces for employees, 89 spaces. We are going to revise that parking for more employees. We recognize that 4 employees is probably light, and 6 employees is the right number for year round, and we're up to 11 spaces during the summertime when we have dock hands and store staff. So parking is seasonal. It's limited to only employees during the winter, and summer parking is used for boat storage during the winter. 2 truck parking spaces for building C due to being over 15,000 square feet. Not really necessary given what we're doing there, but if we need to do that for compliance, we'll add those spaces to the plan. We do have limited short-term parking for the marine supply store on the asphalt, the trustees' asphalt by the launching ramp. It's been the case since the marina boatyard started operating in the 30s. That's where people parked, and that's not included in the calculations or the drawings. Just letting you know that that's reality. We also have employees parking historically occurring along Boatyard Road, just off of Boatyard Road in front of buildings B and C, and on lot 10. We've had employees park on lot 10, but typically we use lot 10 for trailer storage and mooring storage. Setbacks and pyramid. The site plan application was based on the setbacks and pyramid taken from the middle of the 50-foot wide private road, which is owned by each applicant to the middle on the adjacent property. So that's 25 feet from the property line. The 3 lots adjacent to the private road and the private road are covenanted all together as one property for sanitary. It's in the deed that was in the packet from the planning department. So that border of that one property is what we used for our dimensional regulations. There are pre-existing non-conforming conditions such as the store on the east side being non-conforming with both setback and pyramid. But the addition itself is set back from both sides and complies with pyramid. So that pre-existing portion of the store stays, and we put the addition up inside the setbacks. There's also building B currently has the very edge of the ridge piercing pyramid, and the new building resolves that nonconformity by bringing it down a little bit and bringing it back a little bit from the edge of the road. The next slide shows this graphically. The white portion is what's outside of the pyramid envelope. The blue portion is under the pyramid envelope. On the top, looking west, you can see the to be demolished portion of the building B that pierces the pyramid, and the new proposed building that is a little bit lower and a little bit set further back from the edge of the road to reduce that nonconformity. And then looking northeast, the addition to the building C and the entirety of building B are under the pyramid.
Yeah, I don't think the memo even questions the pyramid, really.
It did a little bit. It said we should confirm that. And just a disclaimer at the bottom of all these slides that these renderings are not meant to be exact. They're just to give you an idea of shape and scale, finishes, et cetera. That's going to be a disclaimer on every slide with renderings on it. Next slide. So this is the proposed complex looking from the north. And what we want to achieve is something that's structurally sound, well insulated, it's well lit, it's safe, it's up to code. It has fire sprinklers in the buildings, and it's accessible by our equipment, both the travel lift and the forklift. ADA accessible with higher elevation of the floors to be more flood resistant and flood resistant construction. 68 slips, 4 buildings with a covered egress deck between building A and building B. You can kind of see that in this rendering. Basically, with the second story on building A and the second story inside building B, we wanted to provide a second means of egress from those spaces. And there's a proposed covered egress deck made out of concrete over steel with stairways going down. Building B, 4,347 square feet with an interior elevated work area. The first floor of building B is at 6 feet, which is base flood elevation. To have a work area, you need to come up to base flood elevation +2, so that's 8 feet. So one side on the east is set up for the workers to have their tools and actually do work at an 8 foot above flood level. All right, sorry, 8 foot elevation, 2 foot above base flood. There's a second floor mezzanine above that area that has room for a parts room and for a yard foreman's office. And I mentioned the egress deck already. Building C, we propose to renovate and add a 4,619 square foot addition. It's a clear span steel frame building with insulated panel walls with sliding and roll up doors for access. Again, flood resistant construction. You'll see in a later slide that this is an excellent opportunity for photovoltaic array on this roof. And we incorporated passive solar heating into this building as well. Thanks.
Is that it?
No, a couple more. Sorry.
Because it really,
I'll move
a lot of
very
detail.
quickly.
There's a lot of detail, and we really do need to move along to the board's discussion. I mean, if you're gonna take us through the photographs, which we have in front of us, you know, I want to give the board an opportunity to discuss the thing.
Understood. So very quickly, this is looking west with an existing and a proposed rendering. Next slide is looking west again at the building A entrance. Gives you an idea of where the addition will go. Next slide, looking north at building B. Those 3 adjoining structures are combined into a single structure with the covered egress deck between the 2. Next slide, looking northwest at building C. You can see what we've tried to do is take the existing building's footprint and roof line along the road and extend that roof line up to meet the new clear span roof. Next slide. This is looking the other way, northeast at building C. On the left side of the proposed, you can see the Trombe wall for passive solar heating. And next slide shows just a overall view. Environmental protection here, with putting boats inside, we use less shrink wrap. We're going to have a lot more energy conservation with well-insulated buildings and energy capture. with photovoltaics and passive solar heating. Safety, improved working conditions. This definitely serves the needs of the community with the LWRP, Local Waterfront Revitalization Plan, saying that it should do what it can, the town should do what it can to preserve these water-dependent uses, saying that the entire complex is a water-dependent use and to allow flexibility for changes in configuration to accompany industry trends. The town should also work in conjunction with the marina operators to achieve that.
Again, thank you very much. Sorry to rush you. Okay, Mike.
Do we ask about
Any questions?
Yeah, we're gonna go into the discussion. Do we need to go for lead agency now or?
No.
We shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it on the record that you intend to declare lead agency, but technically an EAF Part 1 hasn't been submitted. That's usually, the way that the process is laid out, that's submitted. Board makes a secret declaration. So you could just handle it at the next meeting. You don't have to go around and make a motion or anything.
That's fine.
Thank you, Eric and Brian, wherever you are. You have answered many questions. When you look at building B, you see 3 rusting buildings cobbled together, and you articulated that the sagging roof line, it needs to be taken down and repaired. I'm still am not clear on the water dependent use of the retail shop, and we've been talking about it. And are you saying that, well, let's just go to what Brian said, that the planning board is fine if you submit a variance on that? Are you not fine with that?
We sincerely believe that it is a water dependent use. It truly, absolutely. This is not West Marine retail in Riverhead. This is an integral part of that marine service business.
I was in there 2 times this week. Yeah, it's fishing gear, it's everything. I think the concern is, well, what do you, when you're going to expand it, right? You're going to make it a more retail?
The footprint will not expand, and the second story addition is over a portion of the retail square footage. And that second story addition is planned to house the service manager and the dock master to give them a clear view of the operations that are occurring out on the water and in the boat movements. Those 2 functions right now are incorporated alongside that retail store, marine store supplies, kind of cordoned off behind little desks and walls.
I don't want to interrupt or cut anybody short, but can I just propose, because usually it's the building inspector who determines, can I just say that I think that's a good idea right now? And we ask the building inspector.
Turn the issue over.
Because we're all going to go around debating whether it's water dependent use.
This is what Brian and I discussed this week. Exactly.
Great.
So
I just wanted
the clarification what was going on in there. So is the marine shop open year round? Because I find the parking paradox where you have 89 spaces that are going to be occupied with boats come fall and winter and spring, where are people going to park? I mean, I personally parked where you said in the East Hampton Trustees, asphalt right in front of the building there.
Yes.
So is that acceptable parking? Is that enough?
During the winter, we get very few, if any, customers in the marine supply store. We still have a lot of activity there because we're doing all of our winterizations, coverings, and then starting our spring commissioning work, changing filters, et cetera. So all of that activity all of those parts are moving through the marine store, being inventory, being put onto work orders, et cetera.
Very good. So I'm generally in favor of this proposal. The one thing the 16-foot light, I don't think this board is shot down higher than that. So I don't think we can do that, but.
I think our engineer, Drew Bennett.
Good evening. My name is Drew Bennett, consulting engineer on behalf of the family. So the 16 feet is 16 feet above ground, but it's actually at a second floor door. It's 8 feet above the deck at the second floor level, and we'll clarify that in the future plans. So in other words, it's a light that's at a second story door that goes outside.
Okay.
It's 8 feet. As you
Isn't
step
it
out the
also
door.
like between building?
Yeah, there's
C?
like a little bridge
A and B
area that's on that, so we'll clarify that.
Okay.
It's a lot of information, we
To
understand.
the outside world, is it 16 feet?
So technically, it's 16 feet above the dirt,
Right.
but it's actually 8 feet above this outside deck, so to speak. So we'll clarify that that's what it is.
Where's it mounted?
It's mounted on, it's a door light.
Oh, it's on the building. Okay.
Yeah, and it's 8
And
feet.
therefore code compliant, you would say?
Yeah.
In my opinion, yes, but we'll make that more clear. You know, but it's not a light that's 16 feet above.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
So.
Peter Madeline, just one quick clarification. We're not building a deck between those two to be a viewing deck where people sit back on their sofas. It's fire egress. So we need to have light for people to get out onto those decks in case of a fire to exit. So.
That's let's throw it open to the board. Anybody have any questions, anything they want to add, or issues they want to raise, or should we move along to the questions?
Just some comment. So we're saying that it's 3 feet from the leaching field to the top of the groundwater. But in each pod, we ask for 4 feet. So.
You know what, Randy? We don't have the plans from 2019. I did design the system. I can't remember if it's 4 or 3 feet. I think it's 4 feet, but we can respond to that question in detail. I'm just not prepared to do it tonight. It's another set of plans. It's in another file.
The other question is the memo says that, it's a low area, it's a low site, and that groundwater is about 2 feet below the surface. And the swales, the swales, which I guess are going to catch all the roof water, are say 2 feet. So I'm just wondering what you're thinking about the swales being in the groundwater table.
So the groundwater elevation I think Brian is referring to is what's reported as highest expected groundwater, which is a requirement that you design the sanitary system for, which is elevation +2. And one of the reasons that we went with a swale system was just for that reason, is that we have a limited amount of soil. However, we have an existing condition that we're greatly improving. We don't have a flooding issue right now. We don't have a runoff issue right now, but we're greatly improving that. The typical water level elevation is like -1 to like +1. So there is a buffer during during normal times and even some of the spring, tide. So the +2 is the highest expected, and we would sort of argue is an extreme condition.
I don't know how we want the engineer to take a look at the drainage plan.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. That's fine.
I think, I see you're going up to elevation 6 to meet flood, the base flood elevation. I don't know how, this is just sort of a talking point, but when I used to work on the flood maps and so forth, they generally don't take sea level rise into account. This is a base flood elevation, probably from the last storm that FEMA went out and measured. Have you thought about going to 7 or giving yourself a little more margin in there than just 6? Is that super expensive to bring in?
So right now, the lowest level in building C is at 4.4 elevation. Raising it up to 6, and Boatyard Road is about 7.
Okay.
So our idea is have the concrete floor of the proposed building C be at 6 foot on the north side facing the yard, and at 7 feet where it gets out to Boatyard Road. So the water would naturally go towards the yard, and this is flood resistant construction. So all of the surrounding walls are high enough at base flood elevation +2. So there's a concrete wall all around that the steel sits on at 8, with basically like a port or a hole with dampers. So if you get a flood, the water has someplace to go.
So that sort of flow through.
Correct.
And this is all on slab? You're
all on slab, yes.
It's all on slab. And the floors, I looked, I saw the floors are pitched, right? I think they said pitched to the north.
Correct.
And I was wondering if it makes sense. You guys are working on boat engines, et cetera. Where does any runoff or any spill or any leakage end up? Does it end up in a drain?
No.
You know, in the CI, we have these floor plan requirements in the CI zone for the groundwater protection. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
Yes, all of the slab floors that we have at the other marinas where we do work have to have, under the groundwater protection policy, have to be sealed with basically an epoxy coating. So nothing can go through the concrete and get into the groundwater. If there's a spill, we clean it up before it goes anywhere.
So you would basically use the groundwater, the epoxy spec here?
Yes.
Okay. Fuel. Curious about the fuel. You guys, you're providing gasoline?
Negative.
No. Diesel?
No.
Nothing?
No fuel cells?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said you provide fuel. Pyramid from the middle of the road. That's really a question for us. Right now, they're using the middle of a private road as the, usually it's the property line. And I just think we need advice on that.
Yeah, I'd have to look into that.
Yeah, it's just a question. Parking circulation, I think Michael was kind of going at that. How do people go? They go down Boatyard Lane?
Correct.
Past the store?
Past the store, past building B, past building C. There's an entrance off of Boatyard Road for vehicular access. And that's where all of the slip customers go. That's where anybody who's delivering anything to the yard is going to go. There's also another gated access that goes between building B and C over the sanitary system, but that gate is usually shut. And if we need to, we open it so that we can get a mast or something in there. But in general, the main entrance is that entrance from Boatyard. Yes.
And the use, the average, the customer like I would have been, I haven't been in there in a couple of years, but I did exactly what Michael said. I would park on the Trustee and go into the store. So we've got kind of one parking area for the quick customer in the store, and everybody else is going to go back around to the big lot. Okay,
correct.
I got that. I think that's pretty much it.
Anyone else have any?
4-page narrative. I didn't get the 4-page narrative. I don't know if that's this. Is that?
No. The 4-page narrative was in the packet.
I'll give it to you. I think it's pretty.
It's the last 4 pages of the packet.
It's pretty thick packet. Yeah. Let me see if anybody else, Ed, do you have anything? Any inquiry?
Just to say that, it sounds like this is really about improving what's there. And
Correct.
repairing some buildings that are pretty decrepit, essentially, right? We're not looking to increase the number of slips, the number of customers. It really is a matter of making this more efficient and water resistant, essentially, right?
And accessible by our machines as well.
Accessible.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I look at it as a project that you have a property that needs improvement, you need to bring it up to date. I think you have to deal with sea level rise, which I think you're doing. A lot of the proposals that you're making. So on the surface, I think it's a great project. I commend you for doing this, and I'm certainly for it.
As like I said, we're very, very pleased to see the ball starting to roll on this. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I too am generally supportive. I think that the water dependent use is an important issue, and as I said, instead of debating it, I recommend we just send it to the building inspector, because I think that's where it'll end up.
We all agree on that?
Yes.
I think that and Brian Frank, obviously, we're lucky to have his analysis on this, as well as Eric here tonight, because he knows these issues, and it's a fairly positive memo. I agree with Randy and Brian about the engineer looking at the drainage plan to confirm, but I don't see any major issues here at all. So I think we just have to make sure that that's all true.
Sharon? Okay, so, all right, does the planning board, well, we're gonna hold off on lead agency. Should manufacturers' spec sheets for proposed exterior lighting fixtures be submitted? Yeah. Agree on that, of course. Planning board satisfied with light mounting more than 12 feet above grade, and that's gonna be addressed. Does the board want the applicant to address the potential for additional parking spaces based on the proposed gross floor area of the marine store? And depict the 2 truck delivery spaces required for greater than 15,000 square foot building. And that's,
some of that,
yeah, and that's independent of the plan of the building department's analysis. And does the board want to require the submission of a survey of the property updates to include dimensional setbacks for the proposed additions? I think that's pretty generic stuff. Yeah.
And one more quick, just as another point of reference, Harbor Marina, which we also own and operate on the northern side, also has a marine supplies store. Same parking calculations have been in place for that site plan. It's based on the number of slips and the number of employees. There's never been any delineation of parking or addition of parking requirements for that marine store.
It's an accessory use as opposed to
it's a permitted use under the marina, under the definition of the marina use.
Okay. Very good. Again, sorry to, rush you, but we do have one more item on the plate.
One thing, I just think that we've discussed this with Brian, but the HPOD has a clearing restriction, right? That none of the waterfront users meet. It's really a code problem. Brian said so much when we were on another marina. The waterfront, the WF zone does not meet the HPOD clearing restrictions. And we're accepting that and approving
those. Yeah.
And really, the town board should change the code.
We're not approving any more clearing though, right? I mean, it's 100% clear.
No, but it's just inconsistent.
Well, it's an expansion with no.
Not an expansion of clearing.
Well,
unless I'm mistaken, but I don't think so. I think it's 100% clear.
You know what?
100%.
Well, normally we try to get a revegetation plan. So when it's a resort use or a hotel or a residence.
Maybe Nancy's office can look into it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, specifically, what's
the HPOD require clearing restriction in waterfront zones. Brian, you should probably speak to Brian. He says basically we don't waterfront zone. And so we probably better to have those foods than us.
What would the code, we're probably getting, what would the code change be?
Well, for example, Sunset Cottages, we did a rather extensive revegetation plan to try to get closer to the H-pod. There was one in South Lake. It's a cottage renovation. We tried very hard to get closer to the H-pod clearing limitations with a re-veg plan. On these waterfront applications, we don't do anything. We just.
Well, marinas, right?
And marinas,
Marinas,
which makes
yeah.
sense to me. I think the code is is it really the intention of the town to try to have those clearing limitations applied to water dependent uses? That's.
Maybe, Nancy, like I say, maybe you can put together a memo or something on that, and we could talk about proposing changes, among other changes.
Now, for a quick potential clarification on that, just
real quick.
Think about landscaping. When Martyrs comes in and asks, and you ask about clearing on a landscaping property, every single square inch of that property is used for the business of landscaping. Every single square inch of a marina or boatyard is used for boatyard use. So revegetating or 100% cleared property, there's a parallel for not, although I'm not aware of any nurseries in H-pod, so.
No, it's one a month.
My fault. Yeah.
That's all right. All right. Thank you very much again. Appreciate it. And we'll move this along. Eric, we have a presentation.
Yeah.
Or is it?
Well, I guess what I could do, and I believe Susan Raybold from Cityscape, who's the town's wireless consultant, I believe she's available through Zoom. She has a presentation prepared, but I guess just to give you a background, and then I'll, before that, ask the board if they have comments. So the town's been working on a wireless master plan, which is basically a general guideline of what, where we want to see new wireless facilities, what they should look like. It's a response to the questionnaire poll that was put out. As you know, the town board also pretty recently completely overhauled the town zoning code with regard to the regulations pertaining to wireless. What you have, hopefully everybody on the board has looked at, is a draft of a wireless master plan. I think probably the most noteworthy part of that are the maps that are sort of in the center of the document that outline, first of all, Cityscape identified where there are coverage gaps throughout town. They then came up with a plan as expressed in those maps to remedy that coverage gap in the least intrusive means possible, which means the smallest number of macro facilities or tall towers. So basically what you have and what you've looked at now is a draft of the wireless master plan. That was brought last week in front of the public at a public hearing in front of the town board. There was one public comment received. The town board would now like the planning board's comments on that document, revisions, questions, anything that you see that you want to flag at this time. The next step would then be to bring the document back to the town board, hold a public hearing on that document, based on any revisions that the planning board may have that really weren't revisions as a result of the public comment period. So I guess before Cityscape gives its presentation, I would ask the board, hopefully and I assume everyone has looked over the document. Do you have questions or comments? Do you have revisions? You might want to go at it from that angle. You might want to have a discussion about it and then send questions to Cityscape, or Susan can give a presentation for you, which I believe is about 15 minutes.
Okay. What's the timeline for the town on this?
I mean, we want to get through this as soon as possible. There is nothing that really forces your hand. So if you want to, I think I see where you're going with this.
You know what it is? I don't want to, it's important, and I don't want to do it short shrift.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, even myself personally, and again, I'm the director of housing now. This is something that I undertook when I was working for the planning department. That's why I'm sort of seeing this to its conclusion. It's something that's been a long time coming. We've mentioned it many times at the various public meetings that our previous code was from 2001. are all of the, philosophies and policies that are in the new draft wireless master plan are updates of the town's policies and plans that were a quarter of a century old. So it's a long time coming. It's a process that we've been working on for a while. So we'd like to see it accomplished as soon as possible.
What I'm thinking, and board, please tell me
I
what
just
you
have
think.
one quick clarification on that document, because unfortunately I was looking at it on my phone, so the time I had to look at it. But so I saw the coverage analysis and everything else. It wasn't clear to me if they actually pinpointed where they thought towers should go. And if I might have missed it on one of those drawings.
It included in those diagrams are rough locations of where a tower would be needed. It's also mentioned throughout the document that when you look at it, you'll see that the majority of the recommendation of new installations are small cell on either existing or new utility poles within the right of way. You can't, the technology just has a limitation. You can't just do an entire web of small cell. You need a certain number of macro facilities. There's, I believe, 10, I forget the exact number, Susan could correct me, 10 macro facilities, though, which are 120 to 140 feet in height, or 100 and 120, I'm sorry, it's getting late. But those are sort of on those maps pinpointed. Those are not exact locations. Those are general areas, you can't go too far away from that, but they're general areas of where a new macro facility is required.
This is like full employment for the wireless industry.
So I kind of missed where that was, so.
You want consultants?
Yeah, no.
Let me ask this. Susan, I think we told Susan she'd be on at like 7:30. So I apologize for that. Maybe we should hear from her, hear her presentation, which is supposed to be about 15 minutes, and then we can come back again, if that's all right with her, with questions. So I don't want us to, like I said, I definitely don't want us to give it a short shrift. And I think that our questioning and conversation will be better informed if we hear from her first.
I agree.
Everybody?
Totally agree.
Okay. Susan?
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening. And will you mind terribly if we impose on you for another night for questions with the board?
No, that is fine. And I promise my grandson will not serenade you next time.
You can bring him along. And again, I apologize for it taking as long as it did, but afraid that sometimes is the nature of the beast.
No, it's totally fine. I understand.
If you want to give us the 15-minute version, and then we'll come back to you with hopefully informed and incisive questions the next month.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on this evening. And Eric, thank you for the great introduction. I think you addressed a lot of the project that we've been working on. One of the points that I want to bring out is before we started the mapping process, we did provide a community survey. You had 1,528 responses. And the general takeaway from the poll was that the community, or those who responded, did want to have improved wireless phone coverage. They were concerned about the aesthetics. They wanted to promote a greater transparency between the industry and the applicants with regards to demonstrating compliance with FCC standards and radio frequency compliance. They wanted to address the small wireless build out and to encourage the continued use of public assets. And
question? No question.
And so the mapping that we did started with an assessment of all of your existing towers and base stations. So a base station is a structure on which antenna are located, but for which that structure has another primary use. So for example, a water tank or a rooftop, those building structures were not built for the sole purpose of wireless communications equipment, and that's defined by the FCC now as a base station. So collectively, you have 51 facilities throughout the study area. which is the entire area of the town of East Hampton, you have 32 towers and 19 base stations. Of those 32 towers, you have 3, excuse me, that are identified to be removed, and those are identified in the red fonts there on the slide, site 3, 12, and 21. Once we identified the locations, we then looked at which sites were used just for communication purposes for cell phones. So any site that was used for public safety that didn't have any wireless cell phone infrastructure on it was removed. And if you had a broadcast facility that didn't have any wireless communications on it, that was removed. And so what you were left with are 27 macro cells and 13 small wireless facilities. And we mapped from each of those sites with the assumption that there was there's a service provider at each of those sites, or the same service provider at each of those sites. We modeled at the high frequency mapping level because that is the trend with going into 4G and 5G. And the signal strength is shown through this prism of colors. Where you see yellow, that represents that the cell phone signal from the site, so for example, from 18, wherever you see yellow around site 18, which is represented by that dot, that signal can penetrate most of the buildings and outdoors. Where you transition into these hues of green, that's symbolizing that the signal is strong enough outdoors, but not necessarily in most buildings. Where you see the blue coverage, those areas represent outdoor primarily. And I'm sorry, the green is in building, and then the blue is outdoor. I'm sorry, I'm trying to rush and I'm making mistakes. I apologize. Yellow is in building, green is in vehicle, and blue is outdoor. And then where you don't see any gradation of those colors, you end up with your greatest dead zones, your greatest gaps. Now, we know that not every service provider is at every site. And so we did look at the various propagation patterns from the other providers without identifying who they were. And as we look at our projections to where we expect you to need the most infrastructure over the next 10 years, we also take into the variables of the number of people per square mile. So on this map on the left, it's your census data, and the areas where it is the lightest yellow, you're looking at your lowest densely populated areas of 0 to 500 people per square mile. Conversely, where you see these darker areas, you're looking at over 2,000 people per square mile. That's important because the first map I showed you was about coverage. And then this helps us to take into account capacity, which is the number of people that could possibly be using the network simultaneously. So where you have more people gathered, they put greater stress on the infrastructure. So then this map on the right is showing you over the next 10 years, the areas that not only have poor coverage, but areas that might show good coverage, but where the population density exceeds the number of facilities to accommodate the capacity of the network. And so the areas in red, the areas in orange are areas where we feel is the greatest immediate need. And then over the areas that are the darkest shades of green is not necessarily that you won't have any sites there, but they're not as, the network's not as stressed in those areas. So over the next 10 years, over the entire geographic area of the town, we identify a total number of 10 potential new macro cell locations. 8 of those facilities are around, we estimate, could be around the 100-foot mark, and 2 at the 140-foot. A larger part of that is because of your topography and the way that you have higher elevations in some parts of the town, and then you go to sea level, of course. And so the elevation of the towers is relative to the topography of the land. And then we're suggesting that you would probably need to plan around 44 new small wireless facilities at around the 37-foot elevation. And I need to stress that 44 is per wireless provider, unless you build sites that are, or unless they build sites that can be used by more than one service provider. And as Eric explained, this is a blend of the macro cell, which are the facilities that I think you're most familiar with, that have the larger antenna arrays, and a blend of those with small wireless. The small wireless facilities are typically 50 feet less in height, but we're saying your average would be about 37 feet. And they're intended to provide boost of capacity in between the macro cell sites. And they address, small cells are also great for increasing data. So as we move from the western part of the town to the east, this first slide is looking at the gap fill-in for Sag Harbor. And we are identifying 2 potential new towers or macro cell locations at NT6 and NT7. NT6 is proposed at around 140 feet, NT7 at 100 feet, and then 9 new small wireless facilities at around the 37-foot mark in this general area, in between this proposed site and existing sites like 6, to fill in these gap areas. As we continue and we look at the northern Northwest Harbor and Cedar Point, it's a recommendation for 1 140-foot macro cell to cover this area that's presently underserved, and then about 5 new small wireless facilities here towards the west. With regards to the eastern Northwest Harbor, it's all small wireless facilities, and mostly because the population is not as dense, and there isn't really much land use out there that would support a taller facility. So we're thinking the rights of ways or adjacent the rights of ways might be the best solution in this area. So it's a recommendation for about 8 small wireless facilities at 37 feet. In Wainscott, we're showing 2 new macro cell facilities, both at 100 feet at NT10 and NT9.
I'm ready.
And then 7 new small wireless facilities at 37 feet.
At Spielberg's house.
As we continue towards the east and we go to East Hampton, North East Hampton, and Amagansett, we're just recommending 1 new tower at 100 feet. You've got quite a bit of infrastructure in that area already, but we do think that you'll need something else in this vicinity to accommodate coverage and capacity. Now, as we move to the north from there and into the Springs, we have taken into consideration the rebuild at the Girl Scout camp at Site 15, and we've taken into consideration the relocation of the facility at the Volunteer Fire Department. And we're still recommending or suggesting that you could anticipate 2 new macro cells at about 100 feet and 4 new small wireless facilities, mostly because of the density and the population in this area is really great. And so you have a capacity issue, even though you have these sites that are being, that are existing and being considered for rebuild. Okay, moving to the east, to Napeague Bay, we're showing the potential of 1 new tower at 100 feet and 6 small wireless facilities in this area as we go out towards Montauk Highway, towards Montauk. Napeague Beach, you already have a number of small wireless facilities that have deployed along the old Montauk Highway, and so we think only 1 more in that vicinity would complete that string of small wireless sites. And then in the western side of Montauk, we have identified the need for 2 more small wireless facilities here. And on the eastern side of Montauk, 1 new macro wireless facility at around 100 feet and a couple more small wireless facilities, mostly to address the capacity, especially during your more peak seasons. And we conclude with some additional recommendations. And the first recommendation actually addresses, I think, one of the first comments that was raised about, did we pinpoint exact locations? We did not specifically identify an exact location. We do recommend that you do that, though. You could go ahead and identify properties or land uses in those areas where the sites are proposed, so that you could in advance perhaps come up with an acceptable design for that infrastructure. So when the industry comes in and they want to deploy in that area, not only do you have an expectation that they're going to need a site there, but you could convey to them the type of infrastructure that you would want to see built. The second suggestion is to communicate with the utility pole owners, the utility company themselves, and to talk with them about their willingness to deploy small cells on their poles. And if they do share that common goal, talk to them about your design objectives so that they are not permitting something that's not in character with the goals and objectives of your new code that was just recently adopted. We also recommend that you develop a standard lease agreement for the use of your community-owned properties. You have a number of sites on your town-owned properties, so you have a great standard and great precedence for using town-owned properties, but to standardize your lease and have that available to the industry to look at in advance would help to streamline the review process of those documents in the future. We also suggest that you meet with your wireless and fiber providers and to address common goals to help improve the wireless coverage, because fiber to the sites is imperative to have the most robust network that you can have. So making sure that you can get fiber to those sites would be a very important goal. We also think that if you have mapping available or as-built, to go ahead and digitize or import those as-built into a common GIS file, so that when you're having these conversations, you can start mapping out your fiber so that you can keep track of where it is now and as it grows to see how it's going to all connect. And then consider perhaps talking about the town's objective of providing fiber to underserved areas. You could potentially put in fiber, have enough room in the pipe for future fiber for leasing to help recover some of those costs. But getting fiber out into the community will improve not only your wireless network, but also, opportunity for people to grow their Wi-Fis. So that was a really brief explanation of the project and the mapping.
Thank you.
I know, thank you very much. And I'll tell you, the more I heard, the more I thought we're all gonna have to go back and look at those maps. Because I can think of 7 locations where you could put them.
You'll get some applications that'll make you make tough decisions.
Oh, yeah.
I need to look at my computer.
I want to thank the powers that be for giving us this opportunity.
Once that plan's
I
adopted,
didn't have time to.
then people will be able to come to us and say, it's in the plan.
Well, that's why I'm suggesting 7 particular addresses to Wayne's. So that we can say, listen, we're suffering too. No, sir, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Again, apologies for keeping it as late as we did. When we come back with our conversation, and I'm quite sure we're all gonna have suggestions and questions, I'm gonna try and get it early to the agenda.
Okay, sounds great. And we'll have an engineer on standby. So if you have specific engineering questions, they'll be able to address that.
I'm wondering, maybe we should address, technical questions to you ahead of time so that our discussion can be more informed. Is that all right with you?
That would be great. Yes.
All right, so if you have technical questions.
Is this for next time?
Well, I'm going to try and get it on for next time. Unfortunately, I don't have Tina here to tell me what's on the menu coming up.
Okay. The only thing I would ask is for some clarity in terms of what the planning board role is here.
Yeah.
Because I would like to keep our conversation focused on that. I'm not sure if we're giving recommendations to the town board or what our role exactly is.
And how detailed are those recommendations in terms of geographical locations?
I mean, I hate to throw this back at you, but your comments are as detailed as you'd like them to be.
So our role is to give whatever specific comments we want to give.
There are no limitations. Anything that you see as a board being a practical consideration of enforcing this, as mentioned, once this becomes a plan, you're going to get carriers that are going to say, your plan says that you should have something here. All aspects of it, any thoughts that you have that you want to offer to the town board.
Okay, so let's make sure that the next time that we're here, we have focused, specific ideas. And again, Susan, thank you for that offer, because I think it'll help our conversation the next time, not go into, technical areas that don't address the issues that you need addressed in terms of site locations, things like that. Okay? Okay, all right, thanks all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I would add, it might be helpful, obviously, any questions, comments you have, it might be helpful to focus it sort of in that direction of, okay, we're the planning board, we're going to be seeing these applications when individual carriers come in to fill these gaps. What do we see as the pitfalls and issues associated?
Right, but what I'm saying is we should deal with planning issues, character of the community, that kind of thing. What I don't want to do is have us spend our time on technical, can it be done issues. And that we're going to, I hope, take advantage of Susan's very kind offer to be available.
Location is going to be big for us.
Yeah, well, let's listen.
But they've mapped out, I think, I trust their technical expertise, and they've mapped out approximately where they think location
Right,
should
so
be.
then- so-
None of us are going to say, oh, I think.
No, but looking to
Yeah,
see
yeah,
what's.
But then looking at the
But
specific
when we
map.
look,
I know.
we know presumably the streets, the neighborhoods, where the schools are, that kind of thing. That people might care about.
What's the standard? Is it to be available to every house in town through the walls of every house? I mean, what's the bar here?
Well, one of the graphs that Susan showed at the beginning of the presentation was the results of that survey.
Yeah, but that's
90%.
I know, but
the respondents say they want cell service.
1,500 people, we don't know who they are. They're second homeowners. I want to know who these 1,500 people are. And is that really determinative of anything? There's
First of all,
22,000
it'll
people
change,
in
but
town.
it'll
Is there any language from the town board about what their goal is here?
Susan?
Or Eric, maybe?
90%.
Well,
I mean, what are we aiming for here?
100% coverage and capacity throughout the
Honestly?
town.
Yeah, no kidding.
That might be
And
too high.
is it a town board directive or a legal directive or both?
I don't know that it's a directive. I think it's,
Or goal?
well, I think it's our understanding that that's the directive of what the population wants based on the poll that was
Based on
done.
1,500 people who we don't know who they
Well, the
are.
town board is.
Well, if you do look at the poll,
Big percentage of 1,500.
I will say,
Second homeowners.
if you do look at the poll, it does give you basic information about the respondents.
Well, it's helpful for us to know because ultimately this is a town board decision and we're giving comments. So if their goal is to have 100% coverage, I want to know that because then
Yes.
our comments should be within the context of what their goal
That's-
I'll
is.
start
the
out,
goal.
I don't agree with that goal.
I'm sure you don't. but-
We don't know if it is one yet, exactly.
Well, no, we just were told, but.
But it sounds though that that's sort of a casual goal. I mean, what's been documented?
The reason I'm asking it tonight is just to help clarify.
We
for
need to
us.
know.
Is that a Manhattan goal?
No, but Randy,
I
all
mean,
my friends are, all my friends are
100%
local and they all want
of
solar.
that.
doesn't everybody want coverage?
Well, and again, Randy, again, the town board can take our comments or not.
Yeah, no, I
My
agree.
friends
Yeah,
are all
but once
local.
they adopt that
want
plan,
This is not the forum.
All right, we're too long.
All right, let's
Let's move on.
move on. Susan, again, thank you very much. Eric, thank you for that 100% clarification.
I just want to point out that this is a 10-year projection. And I don't know that in 10 years, the industry will come back to you with a 100% build out plan.
and technology changes every year.
It does.
We all have chips in our head.
So it's a 10-year projection. Okay. All right. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Technological Society.
What's it called?
Technological, I'll get you the right, it's Jackaloo. It's 45, it's 50 years old, but precedent. All right, where are we? I'm gonna do two boards, let me do the two boards that we're gonna do. This is the request of Sean Murphy for a building permit at 17 South Flag Street in Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-28-6-16.2. The work to be done is on South Fay Street, 316 linear feet off of South Fairview Avenue. It's to clear, prune, and install asphalt. The undertaking is $12,000. I've read the board of review and I move for its adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passed 7-0. Next is ditto, is the request of Brendan Moffett and Giancarlo Bruno, 174 Queens Lane, Suffolk County Tax 300-147-4-3.1. This involves some work on Dayton Avenue off the intersection of Accabonac Highway to a cul-de-sac, approximately 50-foot diameter cul-de-sac. And again, it's clearing, pruning, and quite a bit of work involving stabilizing the grade and paving. The bond undertaking is $20,000. I've read the board of review and I move for its adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Pass 7-0. Okay, Sharon, go ahead.
I don't think this is.
Is that, you were chomping at the bit there.
Yeah, I'll do it.
All right, Ed, I apologize.
In the matter of the application of Maidstone Acres 2, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-38-4-1 and 2. A site plan approval. I have read findings and determination of the board and call for its adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you. I apologize.
I'm sure of another board.
I was talking
get
to
him myself.
Was there a second?
Yes, there was.
Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah, 7-0 again. I'm sorry. Randy, just This is the first one for 6:30. That's what I was pointing out to you and got
Well, we don't have to read the whole
distracted
thing.
doing it. You don't have to read the whole thing, just go down to
Is
paragraph
this
4.
Carissa's?
Yeah.
Just
Yes.
schedule a public hearing.
Schedule a public hearing.
Scheduled public hearing, okay. Public hearing will be held. This is in the matter of the application of 219 and 221 Panago Road, which we all know is Carissa's. A public hearing is hereby scheduled to be held at Town Hall 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, August 23rd at 6:30 PM or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard.
You move.
I move for that this hearing be published and noticed.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I was so excited about the 6:30 thing.
It's actually a huge improvement. Well, because it's never a 7, it was 7:30 by the
No,
time we got to.
yeah, no, it's better that way. It's better for the public.
Yeah.
You know, they get-
Well, we just did it, guys, so.
So, all right, 2 weeks till the next one. Who wants to make the motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Nate's so nice, or she
All
did.
those in favor?
We did it.
Yeah, that was.
I thought.
You voted yes.